Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists episode 596. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. Guys, before we started, we were talking about what we're going to do next week. But we haven't really discussed what we're going to be doing in like 4 episodes. We keep dancing around it, but we're not committing.
Sure. I mean, I'm fine with doing a top 600. Zach?
Oh, I'm definitely doing a top 600.
Okay.
I don't know what you guys are doing.
I thought we were going to do the top 10 movies we hated. Just to
I
flip
wanted
it
to
over.
do that list for like 400 episodes. James,
Maybe
James, his normal answer is, well, we can't just do that. We have to save it up for something special.
Yeah. We could have done
what's
that
more
this
special
week.
than episode 600?
No, I agree.
I mean, we could do that for 600. It just, we're never doing another top, whatever, 100 list or whatever. Like that tradition is broken. If we break it, it's officially broken.
So is tradition the reason we should keep doing it?
Like
Well,
we
and
can't,
it's awesome.
we can't get regret and then at
And it's
700 do 600.
That would be weird. I do hear you.
Here's what I say.
Okay.
Let's somehow have a poll. People can weigh in however they want. I don't know how, whatever, weigh in any way you possibly desire.
Okay.
Email, comment on Discord, comment on YouTube, comment on the website.
Anything.
Yeah.
If you feel strongly, you can comment on multiple platforms.
Right.
And
Twitter.
Should we do for episode 600 our 600 favorite movies of all time? Or
meaning
500.
500 to 599.
No,
Right.
501 to 600.
Right. That.
Yeah.
Or our top 10 least favorite films. Our bottom 10 films.
Oh, those
And-
are the two options?
Yeah,
Aren't they?
those are the two we've been batting around.
I'm not sure I'm committed to least favorite, but
James, after 600 episodes, why do you not want to do our 10 least favorite films?
all right, I'll do it.
No, I'm just
You don't
curious.
have to do it.
I don't really have
opening it
a
up to the
reason.
public.
That's why I gave in so easily.
All right. So,
And
yeah.
Just for people to know, if we do our top 600, it'd actually be episode 600 and 601 because we can't do 100. We can't talk about 300 movies in one episode
Sure.
sanely.
Right. We could. It just would be really long.
Yeah, that's why I said sanely at the end.
Right.
yeah, they know the
Yeah.
drill. Our listeners
I-
know the drill.
There might be people who've. When did we do our top 500?
100.
Episode 500.
Yeah, but
95
like-
episodes ago.
Right. So that was 95 episodes ago. It'd be
Like,
nearly 2 years ago.
Roughly 2 years ago.
I'm sure we've gained some listeners who were not listening 2 years ago.
Well, we just assume they went back. They listen to it. They start from number 1, Kyle. Every new listener we get. They start
That is
from
how
number 1.
podcasts work, right? If you
Right.
subscribe, they just give you the first one. You must go in order.
Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
That's how it works.
All right, let us know.
Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to episode 596. Just 4 episodes away from the big 600. We're going to talk a movie that is not a new release movie. In fact, this movie came out a decade ago in 2013. We're going to talk a movie titled Hard to Be a God. Why did we watch this again?
We watched this because it was one of 2 movies that is on all of our watch lists.
Do only
And
2 movies fit that criteria?
No.
There's only 2 movies. Yeah, there's only 2 movies that are on all 3 of our watch lists.
Is that where we landed? I thought there was more than 2. These were just the 2 that you and I were like, yeah, we would watch those.
I think there's just 2 between the 3 of us.
I thought there was like 13. And these were the 2 where we were like, I could see watching that in the next week.
I think there's 13 like between you and I.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
And maybe Zach and I share 10 or 13, but I think between the 3 of us, there's just 2. Anyway,
Right.
so it was Hard to Be a God, this 2013 Russian film,
Mhm.
or Possession, a 80s horror with Sam Neill. And we put up to Zach because
Yeah. Because
Like,
Kyle and
exactly.
James made the decision of what the show was going to be without me.
Yep.
They picked the 2 movies, then put it up to me.
And
Right.
Zach chose this one.
Yes.
And
Right.
so, Zach, why did you decide on this one over the other one?
Wait. Let's do some housekeeping real quick. Then we'll
fine.
get into the movie proper. All right.
Okay.
All right. So that's what we're talking about this week. On top of, and this might be a little bit of spoiler for Hard to Be a God, our top 10 most challenging watches, meaning movies that are hard to watch, or maybe top 10 challenging movies or movies to watch. I don't know, something like that, some variation of that.
Yes.
So before we do that, we need to remind you there's a video version of this podcast on YouTube. Go check it out there, subscribe, and watch while you listen. You could also find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Cinereelists. Get extra after show audio there. And you could also leave us an Apple Podcast review, 5 stars only. We appreciate that. Or you could send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. REEL with an S on the end. And maybe just let us know what you would prefer for episode 600. The traditional add 100 to our top of all time list, or the untraditional 10 movies we hated the most, or 10 least favorite movies, I think is what we're going to call it, possibly. So vote one or the other via email or Twitter or wherever you can contact us. Feel free. That being said, are you guys ready to talk Hard to Be a God?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Let's do it. We're going to jump into it right after this clip.
Все в сером, серые полки, серый рот. Сам министр в сером. Все под цвет местного строительного камня, кстати, дрянного. А королевскую гвардию как-то оттеснили.
Ничего не ударено и не ущиплено даже.
What clip are you going to play?
What do you mean, what clip am I going to play? There's lots of dialogue in this movie. It's
lots
just
of-
hard to understand any of it, even if you're
Sure.
reading it.
Sure. It's just going to be a bunch of mumbling and shoving of faces. I hope you get a lot of mud sounds in the in the clip you play.
All right. So Hard to Be a God is a 2013 epic medieval science fiction film directed by Alexei German. German or German, do you think?
He's Russian, so who knows?
Probably German then.
Probably German, yeah.
Probably German. Starring Leonid Yarmolnik,
Sure.
amongst others. The official IMDb plot synopsis for Hard to Be a God is: in the distant future, a space traveler from Earth breaks a special law and interferes with the history of another medieval-like planet. Now I ask you two, does that sound like the movie you watched?
I don't
So
think that's the best.
that sounds like an awesome movie. Like, if you give me like medieval sci-fi, I'm like, yes, give me medieval sci-fi. If you give me space traveler travels to a distant planet and interferes with their history, that sounds amazing.
Right.
I'm excited for this movie based on that description.
Mm-hmm. This is probably the most truthful but misleading plot synopsis I've ever heard of a movie. Because I think that is what it is about, technically, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's what's actually in the movie.
According to the Wikipedia article I was scrolling through as I was watching this movie, yes, that is what this movie is about.
Okay, so for the record, and I will put myself on the record, I read the Wikipedia plot synopsis as I watched the movie
I was also doing the same thing.
because I could not, like half an hour in, I was like, I don't know what is going on at all. And I felt like you could understand what was going on. I just was not, I was not getting the job done. You didn't do that, Zach, evidently.
I certainly read about the film, but I knew about the film going in a little bit, maybe more
Okay.
than you guys did.
I'm also going to say, for the record, this took me 3 sittings to go through. The first was an hour and 15. The second was then the next night I watched it for an hour. and then I couldn't finish it.
You
And
only
the
had
third night, I
15
just plowed
minutes
through.
left.
No, just 3 hours long. No, I did an hour and 15.
Oh, okay, you had 45
then an hour,
minutes left.
and then 45, and I, for the good of the podcast, I pushed through.
I did it in 2 sittings. I watched an hour and a half,
Okay.
and then based on the plot summary in Wikipedia, I was like, "Oh, this looks like a good point to stop." So I let it get to there, and then I stopped and ate dinner, goofed around on the web for a little while, thought about watching a comedy and like picking it up the next day, blah blah blah. And then after like maybe half an hour or so of doing that, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna finish it because I don't want to prolong this. And so
Power through.
That's what I did.
Zach, what was your watch experience?
I watched this in 2 goes. The first one was a half an hour, and I was watching it on my iPad because my wife didn't want to watch it, and she didn't even want to see it.
Well, I don't blame her. Yeah.
So I had it on the iPad, and then half an hour in, I turned it off, and she's like, "Why'd you turn it off?" I was like, "I don't know. This movie is very hard to watch. It's so dirty." And she's like, "Why are you watching a dirty movie?" And I was like, no, like mud.
Sure. Oh, look,
I'm
I'm
not
not
say
sure
the
it was
mud was the cleanest thing in this movie. I wish it was mud. I could have used more mud and less of everything else that they're giving me. All right, so Zach, we've talked about our experience, at least how long it took to watch it. Why did you choose this movie between the two?
Well, so I had 2 options basically, right?
Yeah.
Possession, I just knew of like a kind of a maybe a artsy horror movie, I guess.
Mhm.
Okay.
It just didn't sound appealing to me in the moment. This one I knew was going to be like a more challenging watch, but also like maybe one that had more artistic, interesting things to say. It seemed like a little bit off the beaten path rather than just like a horror movie that got away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd always been curious about it since, I think James and I first thought about watching it like 6 years ago or something.
We talked about watching this.
We did. Yeah.
I didn't remember this movie at all.
Yeah.
Did somebody recommend it to us? Is that why
It's possible. It was between this and another movie, and we watched the other movie.
Huh.
But yeah. So this movie was certainly interesting.
Well,
Yes.
so do you just want to jump in with your review, or do we want to dance around this anymore?
Yeah. What'd you guys
Okay.
think?
I want to know. Yeah,
start.
you go. Please, Zach, go.
Okay, hold on. In 2018, Jay Martin recommended it to us.
Okay.
You want to hear what he said when he recommended it to us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was wondering if there's an episode of the podcast where you guys speak about Alexei Germain, whatever, film,
Germain.
Hard to Be a God.
Germain.
I have noticed this film in James's watch list a while ago. Unsure if you checked it out and would love to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe you could tie it into a top 10 films featuring a god. We did not do that.
Oh.
Anyway,
That would have been a good suggestion.
if you do get around to checking out Hard to Be a God, because it is an experience like I've never had before and probably will ever have again, it affected me in many ways, good and bad. Enjoy. P.S.
Enjoy.
I checked out the film Jerry because of the podcast and loved it.
Yes. Love Jerry.
So when
Jerry-
we finish this, I'm emailing Jay, who emailed us in 2018 to watch this.
Do it.
If anybody ever accuses us of not watching the movies that are recommended to us, I will say, might happen 5 years later, but it does happen.
Are you going to say to Jay, dear listener, thank you for your suggestion. Please never send in a suggestion again.
Kyle's making a lot of assumptions here.
He really is.
Just
Really
because
is.
it takes me 2 sittings does not mean I hated it. For sure.
Well,
All
did
right.
you, James?
Well, let me get
Or
into
Zach?
it.
Okay.
Let me get
all
into
right.
it. First of all, probably you listening at home have not seen this film. So let me just briefly give you a better synopsis than what that IMDb synopsis did. Okay.
Mhm.
We are in medieval Europe, like around like 1300 or something like that. That's what it feels like, right? It's really another planet that's stuck like 800 years behind us technologically. So it's essentially like medieval Europe, okay? Everything is dirty and broken down and gross, and it's just a dirty, muddy, rainy,
Feces ridden,
infected, like medieval town, right? And everyone there's
miserable existence.
Yeah, for sure.
right?
And it's like pre-Enlightenment, pre-Renaissance. They never have a Renaissance because they like outlawed intellectualism. Yeah, so like you have to be dumb to live there, basically.
Scholars are being murdered.
Yeah,
in this world. Yeah,
just for being smart.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the movie is an experience. That is a great word for this movie, because it does such a good job of making you feel this movie. There is so much like visceral reaction to what you're seeing on screen, because it really honestly captures the gross dirtiness of this lifestyle incredibly well. And I was actually so impressed by how well this movie effortlessly, like seemingly effortlessly, shows the most disgusting things that just seem so authentic, and like they just accidentally happened. Like it'll just kind of be panning and there'll be some character that just kind of pops up and then he like snots all over his face. And it's not the center focus of the frame at all. It just kind of happens off to the side as it's panning past him. And it's just like so gross and seems so just authentic. Anyways, it was an experience. It was a hard watch for sure.
Yeah.
It kind of tries the patience a little bit as you're just searching somewhere, anywhere. Give me a plot or a thing to care about. But I mean, visually, it's kind of super interesting, and the sound design is really interesting. The set is interesting. I don't know. I think this one's intriguing.
Yeah. So, camera-wise, most of the scenes are one take. They're not oneers, but they're not like expertly choreographed. It's just the camera's just filming a character or a room, and it's kind of panning around. But the entire time, the camera's just crowded. Like you never really know where you are. Just
very
because
claustrophobic.
There's people huddled in front of the camera. There's at one moment, like there was someone off camera waving chicken fingers or like chicken feet in front of the camera that are out of focus. I really want to know how this movie was directed, because it seems incredibly improvised and random. Like you said, someone's just like blowing their nose into the camera as it pans past them, and then they duck back down. And was Alexei German giving people this direction, or was he just told them like, all right, we're going to be filming this guy walking around and you just do things?
I would bet money that it's heavily thought through and choreographed.
Okay, so he was saying like, you wave chicken fingers and
absolutely,
you
100%.
blow your nose, and
I definitely think so.
Yeah, like there are so many people who look directly into the camera in this movie.
I think intentionally so.
Oh yeah. They're not hiding the fact that like. So I haven't seen the movie like Funny Games, but you guys talk about how Funny Games sort of indicts the viewer for watching it, and I feel like this movie's doing the same thing, where the characters keep looking at you, of like, oh, you're still here, you're still watching this disgusting mud, and the cruelty. I think that's what got to me in this movie. It was just the amount of human cruelty you see on screen. Like the main guy, the Don, who's the god from Earth, he's just constantly grabbing people by the nose and shoving them by the head. And it's just like his utter disregard for life was astonishing, even though he was not allowed to kill, apparently, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, he never kills people on screen in this movie. At some point, there's an inciting incident that happens and stuff happens. But for the most part, he's actually being nice to people in a way. It's a rough and tumble world. It's like you live in this
nicer
room
than
where
Kyle would have been.
No, I thought he wasn't allowed to kill people. Like, the whole thing is he cuts off ears because he's from another planet. Again, this movie doesn't do a good job of laying this stuff out. This is me reading Wikipedia as I'm watching the movie. As I'm reading Wikipedia, I'm like, this movie sounds awesome. And I'm watching on the screen, and it is not connecting whatsoever.
Oh, it connected. It just, they weren't saying the words in as easy to understandable form as paragraph form, like on Wikipedia. Yeah, I did not hate it. I do think it's hard to watch, but there are lots of movies that are hard to watch that I like. And so I don't see myself ever watching this again, but I'm glad it exists because it's super interesting. I do think you probably could have made an equally interesting movie with like 45 minutes to an hour less. And just had a little more, you could have crammed what plot is there into like a smaller package and it would have been fine. But that's not what you get. You get 3 hours of like vast majority claustrophobic scenes of sweaty, disgusting, poop riddled men bouncing off each other and like, you know, doing
mumbling to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine seeing this in like a 4DX theater.
I would love to see this movie in 3D because even though you're like super claustrophobic, there were so many things going on in the foreground and the mid and the background. Right. It's like there was even on my screen here at home, there was so much depth, despite the fact that you were only seeing like 5 feet to the back of the room every time. For the most part.
I'd love to see this just with a group of people.
Mm-hmm. Just to see the reaction and how each person reacts to this movie, for sure.
If I saw this like in a normal AMC theater, I'm pretty sure I'd be the only one sitting there by the end of it.
But yeah, like how many people... The only reason I finished this movie was for this podcast. There was multiple times where I'm like, I know what this is. This is not going to change. I can just dip now and be none the worse for wear. But
I mean, it kind of changes.
I would say the last 15 minutes is different. It actually tries to resolve the story.
Mm-hmm.
But the first 2 hours and 45 minutes, the setting might change, but the interactions and the feces does not.
Sure. Fair enough.
I just wrote in my notes, smell-o-vision. Can you imagine, like, you got to smell this movie as you're watching it?
How much do you think actual society was like this back in the day?
Probably more than we think. Like, do you remember the beginning of, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and there's the Bring Out Your Dead scene?
Mm-hmm.
But before that, they just pan through this disgusting village where people are like flogging cats and it's, old women. I imagine that the Dark Ages were called that for a reason. It's not
Mm-hmm.
It's probably pretty muddy, pretty gross. There's no plumbing. If you're not one of the elite class, you're not really important at all. So
mm-hmm.
I would say this is probably maybe the most accurate portrayal of life during the Dark Ages, the medieval era.
Well, I think it's not only the Dark Ages, it's like the Dark Ages, if the Dark Ages just never progressed at all.
Right. There was no enlightenment.
There's like 100, or I don't know how long the Dark Ages were, but there's twice as long of a Dark Age.
If it could sit and stew for a while.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing we haven't mentioned is movies in black and white. So not only is it grimy, but it managed to portray that without color.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of impressive for me to be like, well, we don't have to say specifically what happens right at the very beginning of the movie, but it's pretty gross and it sets the groundwork for the rest of the movie, I would say.
That was like 4 nights ago. I don't
remember what happened at the very beginning of the movie.
You don't remember?
No.
There's an outhouse at the very beginning of the movie.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And the outhouse is elevated.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the person using the outhouse is basically just sticking his behind outside of the outhouse and letting it go.
So that's a real thing.
I don't doubt it's a real thing, but the guys underneath it playing in the result of it is disgusting. And black and white or color, you understand what's going on. in that scene.
Thankfully for them, human feces is, dark and bird feces is white. So it's really, black and white really captures it well for us. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a movie where like in the first 5 minutes that's happening and they're like rubbing it on their faces.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
on each other's faces.
This movie tells you what it is immediately.
Yeah.
You're not building up to this gross moment. It's gross immediately and stays gross the entire time.
Well, for at least like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Then after the scene with the inciting incident, after that scene, it opens up quite a bit.
After the slaughter?
Yes.
Yes.
It opens up quite a bit. You leave kind of the cramped rooms. You go from like the battlefield, the town after it's been run through, which is like going through the town. Like just the camera itself is not in these like 5-foot spaces anymore. And then you go from there to like when it's snowing, which is weird.
Oh yeah, there's a time jump.
Right.
That's right.
There's a time jump right there at the end. Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked it.
Okay, that's good. I'm happy for you.
Zach, I kind of feel like you like it too.
I did. Yeah.
Right.
I think it's super well made and interesting.
Yeah. I think so
and
too.
it's kind of fun how committed it is.
Yeah.
It's very committed and it has no shame, I would say. But it does keep itself in like the concept itself. I just wish the dialogue had been more clear, because then I probably could have followed it without the Wikipedia help. Because I was just like, I know things are happening and I'm not understanding.
I wish it was in English.
Do you think that would have helped?
Yeah, and then I wouldn't have to read subtitles.
I still think they were talking around everything.
A lot of the dialogue is random. It seems like, where someone will be like, the crow pisses in the north. Then someone goes, soup is warm. And that's not an actual line of dialogue, but it felt like people were having conversations and they weren't really saying anything to each other.
Well, I think they were living in the environment. So like,
yes,
if somebody interrupted their conversation, they would just like say a word or two to that person and then push them away by the face.
Yeah, so much face
and then they'd continue their conversation. And since it's all in weird medieval code, it was like, okay. One thing that I didn't think came through clear enough, and again, I know it's in there because I remember hearing the lines, but the synopsis on Wikipedia helped a lot, was like, some of these people are actually aliens, meaning they're from Earth. And then there's other humans that live there that are native to that planet. And the ones that are from Earth have assimilated and become like the powerful ones in a way.
Yeah.
And he's one of them. And he's convinced everybody that he's a god. And so they just kind of don't mess with him and let him do what he wants. And he's kind of become the royalty of the planet. And I think that's really interesting. I'm just not sure without a summary you would have ever gotten that from the movie. Unless you caught it right at the beginning when they say this is not Earth.
Mm-hmm. That's why I added this movie to my watch list. So because I was on the podcast when this email came through.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow I heard about this movie and I read the synopsis and I go, this sounds interesting. And I'm always looking for like maybe a great sci-fi movie I've missed, because I like the genre. I think I've seen most of the big sci-fi movies, but I'm always trying to find like, oh, maybe there's another one out there that is super interesting that I just have not heard of and have totally missed. And I was hoping that's what this movie was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. I mean, it's sci-fi in plot, but it's definitely not sci-fi in presentation.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
You guys can probably tell I did not enjoy watching this movie.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate or respect the movie, because it commits to something and it follows through with that commitment the entire time.
Yeah.
Just the thing that it committed to turned me off so quickly. It was hard for me to enjoy watching it.
Kyle, can I recommend a movie that you might like more?
Yeah, please.
It's called The Navigator, A Medieval Odyssey.
Okay.
from 1988. And it is a sci-fi medieval movie with time travel. It's also in black and white, but it's from 1988. And it's people in like medieval England find a tunnel that leads them to modern day New Zealand.
Oh, cool.
And it's kind of what you're talking about, what you want. And I really liked it.
Yeah, let's see. In the 14th century, a village seeking escape from the Black Death are guided by a boy's vision to a tunnel into abandoned mine and emerge into the 20th century New Zealand. And it's on Canopy, and it's 92 minutes. This has got three gold stars in its favor.
Nice. Yeah.
Yep.
So I recommend that movie.
It's in color. It's probably in English.
I don't think it's in English.
You think it's in what?
I don't remember.
In Kiwi, in New Zealand?
It might be French. I don't remember.
It might be French.
You'll have to tell me.
Okay, I will tell you.
You speak French.
Yeah. I don't speak French. I studied French in a previous lifetime.
Let me read you this paragraph about Hard to Be a God.
Okay.
A team of scientists travel to the planet Arkanar that is culturally and technologically centuries behind. Progress is stuck way back in the Middle Ages. Okay, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Anybody the inhabitants of the planet consider an intellectual is instantly executed. We talked about that.
Yeah, we see that. Yep.
The scientists are ordered to not interfere and work undercover. I don't remember that being presented in the movie. Was that in voiceover right at the beginning?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But one of them, Rumata, who's the main character that we've been talking about, wishes to stop the senseless murders of brilliant minds and is forced at last to pick a side. I don't remember why, the inciting incident happens. I don't remember them saying, I didn't feel like they had brought him to the edge and he wanted to stop the senseless murders. Or maybe because his friend got killed. Is that what? Like, that's how I saw it, was like he was mad about his friend getting killed.
No, I thought he was mad when I don't think it was his wife. I can't remember what her role was.
That's right.
There was a woman that lived with him. And then towards the end, we're just going to spoil this movie, but
sure,
it's fine. She was killed.
But she wasn't a scientist, right? Nor was she intelligent.
No, but I think once because there is talk about like the Greys. There's the Greys and the Blacks, and the Greys were killing scientists. I don't remember what the Blacks were doing.
Which one is the religious sect?
Maybe the Blacks were the religious sect, and the Greys were the anti-intellectual. Yeah, because didn't the Blacks take over the city at one point, like midway through the movie?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was eventually the Blacks raided his house, killed his servants, killed this woman, and then that's what incited him to finally break his code and start taking heads.
Okay, I could see that, but to me, that's less like stopping the senseless murders.
That's less senseless murders.
That's less like doing something to stop the senseless murders and more just like getting revenge for like coming after him in his own.
Yeah, it seems like maybe it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like you said,
Sure.
Zach, he broke the Prime Directive. He interfered.
Yeah.
And then he got glasses. So, it all worked out.
Imagine needing glasses and not having them.
So I think about like if I was alive during Dark Ages, and I would be useless because my glasses I need. I probably wouldn't be literate anyway, so I could probably still function as like a farmer of some sort. But
sure,
for sure, like fine tasks I would not be able to accomplish without my glasses.
Glasses were invented in the 13th century.
Yeah, but if you were a peasant digging in the mud, you were not getting glasses.
No.
The
But some
other
people would wear masks with like tiny little slits in them because if you like squint your eyes, you can see better.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The other Monty Python moment this reminded me of from Holy Grail was digging in the mud diggers. When King Arthur says like, "I'm your king," they're like, "I didn't vote for you." And just seeing people digging in the mud reminded me of that movie, but less comedy in this case.
Hard to Be a God is on They Shoot Pictures, don't they? as
Yeah,
the
think it's on Sight and
228th
Sound.
most critically acclaimed film of the 21st century.
Okay.
I mean, that's like 10 years, right? So 228 is not that good.
No, it's not that good.
Not in 10 years. I mean, it's good, but it's not that good.
Isn't it also that Alexei German did not finish this movie, and his son had to complete it or had to complete the final mix or something like that? I thought I read.
Yeah, I thought they were like nearing the end of the edit or something.
Yeah.
Based on what I read. So that it was mostly done for the most part.
Right. But the family had to push it through to the end.
Yeah.
One of Sight and Sound's best films of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it certainly has stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
Does it have a greater message?
I felt like the message it was trying to say was like the importance of intellectualism and of knowledge. Because this was showing a world that was anti-intellectualism, anti-knowledge, and how it was mired in muck. I don't know if it got the message across very clearly, though.
Is this like an indictment on the Soviet Union kind of a thing?
Possibly.
Because he's a Soviet director after the fall of the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
That's above my pay grade.
I mean, you could argue that the Soviet Union was anti-knowledge, anti-intellectualism, right? You didn't want people to have knowledge and be empowered because it's harder to control that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure there is some of his experience as living in the Soviet Union and as an artist, and see the effects of that transferred into this book or in this movie. Oh, that was the other interesting thing. This is by the same authors who wrote Stalker, or it's based on the same, based on a book by the same guys who wrote Stalker, which is
that is
a
interesting.
Tarkovsky movie. Yeah, so I think that's another thing I was hoping for a Stalker-like movie. Didn't quite get that.
You got this.
I got this. So
I will say this though, we've talked longer about this movie than we do a lot of our main reviews.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Like even if it's not like our favorite movie of all time, there's at least like you can see that they were trying to do something, and they probably, depending on who you are, knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And if you're not that person, it's still hard to walk away from after having seen the whole thing and thinking about it in a critical way, as opposed to like a passing entertainment kind of way. To not just kind of be like, there's something here to respect, even if you didn't have the greatest time with it.
Yeah.
I think like a movie that I truly wasn't enjoying, like 100% was not enjoying, I would not have come back to later on that night. You know what I mean? Like a half an hour, 45 minutes later. I think I just needed a half an hour break.
Yeah, I get you.
Just to be like, okay, this movie is what it is. Hopefully the back half has a little more plot for me to hang my hat on. And it does. Like I kind of feel like the back half of it, I mean, maybe an hour into the back half of it, it really kind of goes somewhere. I actually liked the ending. And you say you can say a lot by putting glasses on a guy.
Right.
Seriously. Like that's pretty much all they do is like put glasses on a guy and open the frame up. And you get the feeling like things have changed. Like the fact that somebody would wear glasses in this world and not get killed for it is progress in this world.
I will say I was most engaged once the inciting incident happened until the end of the movie. So like that last 45 minutes to an hour, I'm not quite sure exactly. Probably last 45 minutes. Because at that point it felt like we have story progression. Where the first 2 hours, even more so, you're just kind of getting the same thing. I'm sure there is story progression within. I mean, things do happen, so it's not literally the same thing, but it feels like the movie is just kind of circling for those first 2 hours.
Sure.
And then you get this something happens and this guy makes a decision, I'm going to do something now. And you don't see what he does. You see the result of what he does.
Yeah.
And then you get kind of this epilogue at the end. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can at least like give this my undivided attention, where for a lot of this movie, it was hard to give it my full attention.
Oh, you weren't even watching it. You were like half watching it?
I was really trying to not be on my phone. Like I had to put my phone down, face down, and be like, no. And then someone get pooped on again. I'm like, oh, back on the phone.
I also liked the peeing scene in the kind of alleyway. Not only like when he's trying to talk to that guy and he can't go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like that scene, and not only just that part, but the part where he's kind of like talking to the camera. He does kind of like a long 10-minute monologue to the camera in that scene. And I liked that. In fact, I liked most of the scenes where people were looking at the camera and talking, as opposed to like the like bouncy conversations in the small rooms. Probably just because there was so much of that.
Yeah.
That I understood it. But like this movie, maybe Aliens. I'm trying to think of like movies that set up an atmosphere and just nail it like 100%. Like you feel the presentation of the movie is the same as what the movie's making you feel. And I feel like this movie nails it. Aliens. I'm trying to think of another one where the set is
Mother.
Like, Mother is a good one for sure. When that movie turns, when the environment turns, so does the movie.
Yeah.
What else? Men?
Oh yeah, Men.
I kind of feel like Men did that.
Uncut Gems in a way.
Sure. I could see that. I mean, even more than Uncut Gems, I kind of feel like the other Safdie brother one.
Good Time?
Good Time.
Yep.
Zach, can you think of any?
Black Swan.
Oh yeah, Black Swan.
Sure. Yep. Another Fincher movie.
I'm sure there'll be other movies we talk about on our upcoming list that will fit this criteria too, of they stick to something and give it to you the entire time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Are you tempted to watch any of the other movies from this guy? Because supposedly he's like a really well-respected director, Russian director.
I would watch something else by him.
Sure.
I would, just because he's committed and I can't fault him for that. Like I can't fault this movie for what it is because it sticks to it. I don't have to like it, but I'm trying to talk. I don't like the movie, but it's not the movie's fault. It's just not a kind of movie I'm going to enjoy.
He's got one that has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes called Khrushchev, My Car. It's a comedy drama.
That's the one that I'm probably most likely to watch. It's like a dark comedy that follows Stalin's last days. And it looks interesting.
Is it also in black and white?
What's that?
Is it also in black and white?
Yes.
From 1998. So
yeah.
Old. Sorry. Yeah, 98. Old, but not old. Not terribly old.
Yeah. It's
like
the era of the Matrix.
All right. Anything else we need to say about Hard to Be a God?
No.
Nope. We're all.
Is it going to make anyone's list?
It didn't make my list. It was challenging. Most challenging? I don't know.
It did not make my list, but my list is movies that I enjoy watching, which are challenging.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's generally my list too. Enjoy watching or enjoyed watching?
Right, yes.
Like most of the ones on my list I've only seen once. And I think not only did I find them challenging, but I think other people would too. So, all right.
I wish I could say the same about my list. Some of mine I did not enjoy at all.
That's all right. I like when we bring a different interpretation to the criteria. It makes the list more fun.
All right. Before we get into that list, We got to letterbox this one. Hard to be a God. What are you guys giving it out of 5 stars?
Kyle?
It's 2 stars just because I had such a not a good time watching this movie. But I really give this movie credit for sticking to it. Like, you can't fault the movie for that.
Sure.
It moved you.
It moved me? Like,
Moved him in the wrong direction.
Right. I appreciate what it's doing. I
You respect
appreciate Yeah, right. I respect it. I don't have to like it though. And it'll be 2 stars. And I'll make that very clear in my Letterboxd review too, that this is not like if we do our movie like our top 10 movies we hate, I do not hate this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It just but
It's not a good date movie.
No. Oh my goodness. This would be an interesting movie to show on a first date because if you and your first date make it through together, like just get married right there.
I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest.
I think it would tell a lot.
Depends on what you're looking for, probably.
Have you guys ever done a list of like your top 10 like signifier movies where like if you could show a person these 10 movies and how they reacted to them, you could figure out like if we'll be friends or not, or what kind of person they are? I know it's kind of a weird list, but like you have movies where you're like, oh, if a person likes this movie, then we must share this in common or something. Or it says a lot about the person if they like X kind of movie.
We've done a list like that with Andrew, a guest who came on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think we did litmus test movies.
Oh, there you go, litmus test.
That's
what I'm trying to go for. Yep.
We have done that list, although that was probably 5-6 years ago.
That was a fun list to think about.
Yeah, I might have to go back and listen to that one just to see what you guys put on your litmus test movies.
Sure. I'll give it a 4. Zach?
You'll give it a 4?
Yep.
I'll give it a 4 too.
Okay.
I'm cool with
1,
4.
2, and 2 4s for Hard to Be a God. Did you have something else to add, Zach, before we move on?
Yeah, this movie has 259 fans, which means on Letterboxd it's in their top 4 favorite movies.
Nice.
So just a random sampling of people that have this in their movie in their top 4. It's interesting to see what else is in their top 4.
Can you just give us a few off the top?
Yeah. So this person has it plus Only Lovers Left Alive, which I've never seen, but James, you've seen.
Yep.
This person has it and also Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Okay.
And then this person has it and Primer.
I could see that.
I could see this and Primer going together.
Yeah.
How many people do you think have rated this movie on IMDb? Closest to the pin.
15,000.
15,000. James?
4.
4,000?
4 people?
4.
4 people.
Closest to the pin, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, the answer is 4,000. Or sorry. No, the answer is 6.1 thousand.
Then I win.
Yes, you are closest. It's more fun when you guys make actual guesses.
That was a guess. That was a strategic guess.
Yeah, that was a Price is Right guess.
That was a game theory guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Since I answered in the spirit of things, I think that I should get partial credit.
Well, yeah, I agree. I think, Zach, you won this game. So score 1 for yourself.
Wow.
Just because you played by the rules.
I played by the rules. I was closest to the pin. That was the rule.
Yeah, but
be closest to the pin. I knew Zach was way above. I didn't know how far down to go. So I said 4.
Wait, you didn't think I was way above? You knew I was way above.
I felt like you might be way above. But to be honest, I don't look at IMDb, so I don't know what like popular movies get. Like what does a popular movie get for watches or whatever you called it?
I mean, 5 like Dark Knight has 600,000, 700,000 probably.
Okay.
You know, popular movies could probably have a couple 100,000.
Okay. Your average popular movie.
Yeah, probably a couple 100,000 is my guess.
Gotcha. All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's get to our list for this week. This is a list of the top 10 most challenging watches or challenging movies to watch. Whatever you want to pick. I'll go first. This is a list of movies that I generally enjoy / think are okay or not that big a deal. I kind of cheated on this list on a couple things. Not necessarily on the movies, just that I have more movies on this list than 10 because I combined a couple because they kind of follow more of a theme as far as like why they're hard to watch.
Okay.
You'll understand when I get to them. Starting with my number 10, which is 4 movies. These movies are Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, X-Men: Dark Phoenix, Batman and Robin, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Why are these movies hard to watch?
Because they're not good.
No, because they're
not good
something that you
sequels.
love and like a bad version of it.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like the end of the thing.
Yep.
It's like the movie that you watched and you're kind of like, I guess this is over. You know what I mean? Like, this is the end of the road for this thing for me. I'm done with it for now anyway. And that's how I felt when I finished all 4 of those films. And that's why they're hard to watch. My number 10.
James,
Nice.
I already really like the direction you're taking this list, and I'm excited to see what else you have on here.
Okay.
Because I think you have a very open interpretation.
Thank
Kyle?
I guess I'll go next. Yeah. So these are all movies that I enjoy. In fact, these are all probably top 500 movies. So they're either hard because of their presentation, or they're challenging because of just their maybe density of plot or understanding. So it's not necessarily like challenging as in literally hard to watch on screen. I don't tend to like movies where it's hard presentation, as we've seen in the past. So that's why I had to go a little bit wider of not just movies that are visually challenging to watch. So my number 10 is Primer, which is a small budget time travel movie. But I put it on here because this movie is impossibly hard to understand what actually is going on. And that's not a fault against this movie. I give this movie 5 stars. But if you try and actually figure out which person is on what time travel journey and what they've already seen, what they've already interacted with, it's pretty dense. I think someone made a chart one time of there's maybe 400 different time travel events in this movie. The movie doesn't show you everything, but like they said, logically for this to happen within like this couple day period that this movie takes place, some 400 time travel events happened. That being said, Primer, even though it's dense, it presents such an engaging and followable story that it's easy to love.
Love that movie. That's a 5-star movie for me.
Yeah,
as
same
well.
here. Top 100 movie. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so my list is definitely not movies that I all like. A lot of these movies I did not enjoy the experience of watching them. I guess I found them too challenging, but some of them I do enjoy. Okay. So my number 10 is Blue Velvet.
Mm-hmm.
This is a David Lynch film. I think David Lynch is a challenging director. I mean that as a good thing. I think he makes serious, dense, challenging films that can be really amazing. This one, though, it's combined with like subject matter that I personally just find very disturbing. And so the two together, it's just a hard watch. So this one has a lot of like just unsettling images, violence, just kind of, I don't know, aberrant behavior. There's a lot of like voyeurism and kidnapping and violence against women and asphyxiation. And it starts, you see a severed ear in a field with ants crawling all over it. You know what I mean? And so it's just unsettling the whole way through, which I think is a huge part of the point of the film. But for me, it was a challenge watch.
My number 9 is Kids. It's a movie that comes up often. It's probably on most of the lists that are similar to this. movies you would never recommend to people, or what we've done movies you wouldn't watch with your mom or something like that. I'm sure it came up on those. But Kids is so good. This is a movie that is a challenging watch for most people. And I think the reason why it's a challenging watch is because it's effective and somewhat realistic. And also the representation, the acting from the kids in the movie feels real. And if you've ever had a kid in your life who's like screwing up, you know the feeling of being like, I know who you are. I know you're acting like an idiot because you're a kid, but I still care about you. You know what I mean? And I want the best for you, but you're also just going to do what you're going to do, especially a teenager. And so that's kind of what you go through when you watch this movie. You're just kind of like, you're watching these kids do childish things that are safe, but also like very adult things in the most childish way possible. And you know the repercussions of doing those adult things in a childish way. You know what I mean? Of not fully thinking through the repercussions of one's actions at that age. And they're in a city where like a lot of opportunity to get in trouble is there for them. I mean, even though they're getting in trouble in ways that like kids in Ohio could get in trouble. You know what I mean? It's like sex and drugs. It's not exclusive to New York City, that's for sure, even though that's the setting of kids. And so I think for most people, this is a hard movie to watch. And I would be one of them, even though I've seen it like 3 times. And I think that it's just because I think it's so well done. And I also find it interesting that like Rosario Dawson and Chloe Sevigny, this is like one of their very first movies. They go on to, I mean, Rosario Dawson is like, has her own Star Wars TV show.
Right, yeah.
And you watch her in Kids from 1995 and it's like, that's crazy to think that person eventually has her own Star Wars TV show. She's come a long way for sure. And I remember when this movie came out, Madonna saw it and said that every parent should sit their kids down and watch Kids with them. I'm not sure that's what you should do, but I do think watching it is kind of like a sobering experience, because it kind of brings you back to reality that like kids are like just like one little thing away from like possibly completely ruining their entire life, which is scary and uncomfortable to watch. And that's why it's my number 9.
So are you saying I should watch this with Galen now, or should I wait a couple of years before we?
No.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it doesn't glorify anything that these kids are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it shows the repercussion in a way.
Sometimes just showing is glorifying for a kid's mind.
Possibly.
Right.
Also, like, I don't know how kids think nowadays. At least in the 90s, there was like less access to like kids acting up, right? Like the only when I was a kid, the kids that if kids acted up, it's because I saw them doing it at school, right? But now you just pull out your phone and you can watch every high school in the United States when somebody acts up. It's on TikTok. You know what I mean? Like fights, and you could sit there and you could binge watch high school brawls if you wanted to. That just wasn't available to me in the 90s. And so I don't know, maybe just watching the act of it is a glorification of it.
Are you saying maybe like it's being normalized because it's so easily accessible?
I don't know. I mean,
Are we getting into a moral tale here?
I stumbled across a video today. This is way off, and so we will rein this in a minute. I stumbled across a video today of like 30 kids who just ran out in the middle of the street, stopped a random car, and then jumped up and down on the hood of the car and like yelled at it and smacked the windows. And then they all in unison ran away from the car. And they thought it was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
The person filming thought it was funny. And I was kind of appalled by it. And then I thought, I mean, they didn't hurt anybody. They probably put a dent in this guy's hood.
If you were the driver of that car,
they
you'd have
scared
a much
the
different
crap
reaction
out of them.
than yeah.
They scared the crap out of him. I agree. And like how many, if it wasn't me watching it, like how many young people have watched that? Because it was all young people. It probably hits their feeds way before it ends up in mine. And so, yeah, rewind 30 years. I wouldn't know you could even do that. You know what I mean? But now that's on social media for how many people to ingest it and realize that could happen, or you could organize that, or gosh, I don't ever want that to happen to me. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that just because that exists now and you can see it. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, kids, my number 9.
Great pick and great conversation. My number 9 is another movie that's on my top 100, and it is Annihilation from 2018, directed by Alex Garland. This is his second movie. And this movie is about a team of scientists who go into this mysterious zone where DNA is being changed. Plants are being changed. Animals are being changed. I'm not quite sure what's going on. The movie never quite tells you what's going on. And if you're not on board by that point, then they eventually get to a lighthouse and things happen and it gets super weird. And I think that turns a lot of people off on this movie. And that's what makes me love this movie, was just how weird this movie got towards the end. Alex Garland said that he adapted this from a book, and I've read the book Annihilation. But he also said that he did not read the book while he was adapting it. He just kind of tried to think about what the book was about and then write a movie based around that, sort of like a dream. And that's for sure what this movie is like. It feels like a dream where things just kind of go from one scene to the next. There's not always a connective thread between those. But what it's giving, at least for me, of what's happening in each of those scenes and how that's building towards this moment in the lighthouse, I think is really awesome. But I think for a lot of people, they found it not enjoyable to watch. So that's why it's my number 9 movie.
My number 9 is Paris, Texas, directed by Wim Wenders. This is an example of slow cinema. I'm not opposed to slow cinema at all. I think that I actually have a pretty high tolerance for a slow-paced movie, but this movie is slow-paced. It's about it's like a road trip movie, I guess. And
road trip movie.
Yeah, right?
Not really.
Yeah, I get it. It's a man reunites with his son and they go looking for his mom, the son's mom. And so they're like driving through the desert looking for the mom.
Are we thinking about different movies?
No.
I thought Paris, Texas was about a guy who's like in the desert.
Yeah.
He's just been walking and then he's found, and then they call the guy's brother, and the guy's brother has to come get him, and he hasn't seen him in like 20 years because he's just been walking around the desert for 20 years.
Yeah.
That's a very different movie than what you just described.
That's the same movie.
Okay. When do they drive around and try to find his mom? I don't
remember at the end, do you remember the last scene with like the mirror reflection kind of thing?
Okay, so maybe the last 30 minutes that happens.
This movie is so tedious.
Uh-huh.
I did not enjoy this movie, I will say right off the bat, except that last scene is like beautiful. The last scene, cinematography is incredible. Worth the price of admission, I would say. A lot of things with challenging cinema, if it gives you something that makes it worth it, go for it. And this one gave me something that was worth it, even though I didn't enjoy the movie. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. So, have you guys all seen it?
I feel like I watched it because you told me to.
I doubt I told you to watch it. I probably talked about it.
I know I watched it in the podcast era because either you told me to or somebody told me to.
I probably told you to just skip to the end and watch the last scene.
And I agree. It's a very slow. It's a Jim Jarmusch movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Wim Wenders.
Wim Wenders. Yeah, I agree with Zach. It's like very slow. Even the ending is slow, but everything I kind of feel like the length and the pace, the only reason the payoff is as big as it is because of what you've just gone through. Like the hour and a half that precedes the ending would not be near as effective if you didn't have the slow pace of the first hour and a half.
Yeah, I'd be fine.
And that's not to say it picks up. It does not. It just resolves, I would say, in an interesting way.
I have never seen this movie. I feel like I should, but it feels like homework, to be honest. And I know it's going to be slow, and I know it's 3 hours long, and
Is it
it's
3
going to be
hours
hard
long?
for. Yeah, I believe it's 3 hours long. Yeah,
Wow.
and it's going to be hard for me to get into it, but I might just
Yeah.
need to just do it one day,
Do
and
not
then
recommend.
the next day, and then the next day. So if I do like an hour chunks, I can get through it, give it 2 stars, and then move on.
It's a list movie, right?
Oh yeah.
Generally?
Oh yeah, it's on a
Yeah.
ton of lists. Yeah.
Mhm. My number 8 is from 1994. It's Natural Born Killers,
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
okay.
a good pick.
which is an Oliver Stone movie written by Quentin Tarantino, starring Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, Robert Downey Jr.'s in this, Tommy Lee Jones, Tom Sizemore, bunch of people from the 90s for sure. And this is a movie about a married couple that just, on a whim, decide to go on a killing spree. They just decide they're not going to be held down by the law anymore, and they're just going to murder people and steal whatever they want and just drive around.
Do they become like famous for this? Like, do people start becoming fans?
Right. So the movie's kind of two-sided. There's that story, that's kind of the A story, and the B story is that this is being told through like a true crime television show. And it's kind of weird to watch this nowadays because this was a movie that came out in the mid-90s, and they're predicting a future where the most popular television is true crime television. And if you turn on Netflix these days, you might believe that has actually happened because a lot of Netflix is true crime documentaries at this point, like overloaded with true crime documentaries, I would say. And the movie takes a lot of those themes and just kind of basically presents it as like the consumption of these things just breeds more of the crime, basically, that like media obsessing on it, presenting it in an entertaining format perpetuates a cycle of violence, basically. And that's what motivates I'm forgetting their characters' names, but Woody and Juliette Lewis's married couple to do these things. It's one of the things. Like they basically do it just because they want to do it because they have no moral values, basically. And then the fame is like just kind of happens, and they're motivated by it over time. And it's a movie that even at the time tried to make a statement about violence by showing violence and not pulling any punches when those things happen, and like showing people who just have no moral baseline, and also kind of reflecting that back to you through this framing device. And also like just the way it's shot, everything's off kilter, everything's loud and in your face and like constantly screaming at you. The editing is like ridiculously fast paced at times, almost in like an intentionally annoying fashion. And I don't know if Oliver Stone did that intentionally, but I imagine because his other movies aren't really like that. Yeah, it's kind of a movie that's made to be annoying. I would say, like, I think when he made it, he was like, I'm going to make this.
It's pretty hyper,
brash, and in your face, and that's what it was. It's hard to watch, but I do think there's artistic merit to it. So ultimately, I like it. I really like the soundtrack, which was
Good
produced by
soundtrack, yep.
Trent Reznor. It has a couple Nine Inch Nails songs on it. But it's also a good movie, I think. Question mark?
I need to see it again. I remember liking it way back in the 90s when I saw it, but I've probably not seen it since.
I'm sure it's been a while for me, but I imagine if either of us watched it today, we'd feel like it's a very 90s movie.
I bet it's so dated.
For sure.
It probably has all these visual effects that are just like cheesy music video effects.
Right.
A lot of Dutch angles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My number 8 is a 2010 movie directed by Denis Villeneuve called Incendies. This is a movie about a brother and a sister whose mom has just passed away. And they know that their mom is from, I don't know if they ever actually say the country, but they're from somewhere in the Middle East. And the mom leaves each of them a note. And the one of them says, find your father, and the other note says, find your brother. And these two siblings go on this journey to learn more about their mom's past. And as the movie goes on, you learn about how she survived a war as a child and the horrors of war she saw and how that impacted their family. And as the movie goes, the reveals just get kind of worse and kind of worse as they learn more and more about the awful history that their mother went through. So presentation wise, like this, the Denis Villeneuve is shot very well. It's very interesting to watch. There's nothing on the screen. I mean, they show acts of violence and whatnot, so those are challenging to watch, but it's not like Hard to Be a God challenging where you're just giving all this filth. But as you learn more about this family and especially what this mother went through, the movie becomes harder and harder just to watch as a viewer. Still a really good movie though.
Great movie. Fantastic film. Yeah.
Yeah.
My number 8 is an animated film called The Triplets of Belleville.
Oh, yeah. If I did a list of movies I hate, this would be on there.
I don't know why you guys hate this so much. I didn't hate it.
You didn't hate it?
Mouth sounds is the only reason I'm going to say.
Okay, so I also hated this film. It is shot in very stylized animation, right? A particular style of animation that I find very visually unappealing. And then it is almost wordless, right? So there's very, very little dialogue. I wouldn't be surprised if there was no dialogue. I don't remember. I just remember being almost completely without talking. So all you're left is with the imagery and the awful, awful sound design.
Yeah.
Just constant, like just uncomfortable sounding body movements and mouth sounds. And it's just very unappealing the entire way through. I just absolutely didn't like this on a visceral level. So yeah, it's only an hour and 20 minutes, but it was a hard hour and 20 minutes. Yeah. It's called The Triplets of Belleville.
Zach, I've been watching old Whose Lines It Anyway episodes.
Okay.
And do you remember sound effects with Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery?
Oh yeah.
Right. Where Ryan Stiles would make sound effects to the microphone and he couldn't talk. It was all like mumble and mouth sounds while Colin Mockery did whatever he was doing. And that was funny because it was for like 3 minutes. And this movie is like, take that skit and just make it an hour and a half of just someone in a microphone smacking their lips and moaning. And not a fan.
Yeah.
Crazy. Seen it, didn't bother me. I don't remember loving the movie either, but I don't have any bad memories about it. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Keep going.
All right. My number 7 is another twofer. This is Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles from 1987 and 1989. These are weird movies from Peter Jackson before he became a household name. Bad Taste is like about an alien invasion. Meet the Feebles is basically like rated X Muppets, basically. And so a lot of them have a lot of like interesting but awful creature effects in both of them. And they're both made for like almost nothing in New Zealand when Peter Jackson was a nobody. And they've also become cult films, so you kind of have to know what you're getting into. I don't think anybody would accidentally watch these because nobody's going to just play them. Like not even HBO played these. You had to like go get a tape. You had to go rent a tape to see these back in the day. Nowadays, you'll never see it on any streaming service. You'd have to like go rent it from YouTube. You know what I mean? Like Netflix isn't going to randomly get Bad Taste on their streaming service. And they're super interesting to watch. They're not particularly good, but if you wanted to understand why Lord of the Rings, the first 3 movies, are so much better than The Hobbit, watch Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles. You'll be like, there's so much in these movies, in the production design that carried over into Lord of the Rings that he just stopped doing by the time he got to The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
and it just replaced a bunch of that stuff completely with digital creations. And it's interesting to watch this and know like this guy's gonna win awards doing a Lord of the Rings series. It's hard to fathom. Like of any director that I love and respect, this one's the hardest to fathom for me when I watch his early movies, and I'm just like, I don't understand how I do understand. It's just shocking to me that anybody gave this person money in the sum. Like somebody knew that he made these movies and said, yes, go make 3 Lord of the Rings movies. Here is $300 million. Go do it. We trust you. It's just, it's wild. But yeah, these are very crass, low budget movies from New Zealand that are fun to watch. Just know what you're getting into.
All right. My number 7 is another Russian film, so it ties in with this week. This is directed by Alexander Tarkovsky from 1979, and this is Stalker. And Stalker is maybe the be-all, end-all movie of we're going to journey into somewhere weird and see what happens. This movie takes place in a place called The Zone, which is somewhere within the USSR. And a guide and 2, I don't know if they're scientists or just explorers, are traveling into this zone. And in this zone, the laws of physics don't apply. So as they're traveling, they're seeing odd things happen. They're seeing images repeat. And they're just trying to figure out what's exactly happening here. At the same time, they're having some pretty deep philosophical discussions about life and God and the nature of existence. Zach, you mentioned the movie Slow Cinema before, and this movie is definitely slow cinema, but it's just presented in such a visually interesting way, and it knows when to give you, not action, but when to give you something interesting to look at. So there are long stretches where people are just talking, and they're having pretty deep conversations, and then you'll get a scene of like an owl flying over sand, and then it happens again, and they're trying to figure out like this deja vu moment. What exactly happened here? I really have a love-hate relationship with Tarkovsky because I would say half the movies I see of his, I just can't stand. And then the other half that I see, I fall in love with. And this is one where it grew on me. This was a tough one to get into, but as you get into this movie, I think it's really worth it. And it pays off in the end, kind of like you were saying with Paris, Texas.
Nice. Well, I'd love Stalker. That's a 5 out of 5 movie for me. I think there's something about like challenging films that really do push you to the extremes of liking or hating.
Right.
Or loving or hating. Yeah. Okay. My number 7 is the best film of all time, according to Sight and Sound. It's Jan Dielman 23. I don't know how to pronounce the rest of it. This is from 1975. It's directed by Chantal Akerman. It is 3.5 hours long, and it's challenging. So it's almost 4 hours of watching a woman go do chores at her house. Essentially, we see her do cooking, cleaning, setting the table, taking the table down. She engages in some like light prostitution. She just is.
Wait. What's light prostitution?
No, that is a joke. But she, we spend the vast majority of this film, hyper engaged with her mundane chores in her life, right? And the movie does not try to soften the mundaneness of it, mundanity to it. And so we are just very, very, very focused on these repetitive tasks that of themselves don't carry any special interest. But the movie works like a trick on you. It like kind of it has a charm where we see her do these things and we have nothing else to pay attention to. So we're hyper focused on what she's doing. And then as things change, we notice, Like, oh, wait, she didn't turn the light off this time. Why didn't she turn the light off? Like, what's going on with that? You know, so is something wrong? And like little tiny like differences start adding up in our mind, and we start to feed a narrative that is awesome. And then the movie's ending is dissimilar to the movie's main plot. So I would say the movie ends with a bang, like an interesting climactic ending that you're not expecting. But there's clues that you're like making you think about it going up. So it absolutely is a worthwhile experience. I do really like this movie, but you do have to kind of force your eyes to keep looking, because it's a discipline to watch this movie. It's not like entertaining, I would say.
Like you need to be disciplined to have to watch it, or what do you mean?
Like you have to have like willpower to watch it.
Okay.
You know, otherwise
You have to
it's
be
just
committed.
like, it's not going to hold your interest naturally. Until you're like already like hypnotized by it. Once you're 2.5 hours in, I think you're good to go. But yeah, it doesn't help you.
Okay. I do want to watch this.
You committed on show to watch it.
I did?
You did.
When was that?
Like 20 episodes ago, 30 episodes ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Why did I commit that? Did
I don't
lose
know why you
something,
did
or-
that. You didn't have to,
Oh.
but you were very adamant that you were going to watch this.
Well, I'm still going to watch it.
And adamant you're going to watch it soon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you remember this, Kyle?
Oh.
Not really, no, but
Okay.
I believe you.
Well, can I even watch it? Where is it right now?
It's everywhere. It's blown up. You still have AMC
Yes, everywhere.
AMC Buzz Sprouts or whatever, right?
What?
What's your AMC pass called?
Buzz Sprouts? What are you talking about? AMC A-list?
Okay.
Oh yeah, A-list.
I would
just the same
love to
thing.
go see this in a movie theater. I would rather see it in a movie theater, because at least in a movie theater, like, you know, all distractions go away.
If you have to put your phone away in movies like this,
Mm-hmm.
otherwise you have no hope
Right,
of
sure.
actually getting something from it.
All right. My number 6 is another twofer. This is 2 documentaries that are hard to watch. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father, and Black Tar Heroin. One from 2008, one from 1999.
Is that the latter one about the drug black tar heroin?
Yes.
Okay.
So Dear Zachary, kind of an infamous documentary. If you don't know anything about it and you like true crime stuff, then you probably heard about it if you like true crime stuff. But if you haven't heard about it, you should see it and go in cold, but know that it's probably going to ruin your night. And
Yeah,
it's
you
it's
guys
good.
challenged me to watch it this year.
Did you watch it?
I'm still here, aren't I?
Okay. Well, what do you mean? You think you might quit the podcast if you watch it? It's not that
Maybe.
bad. In fact, the more you're prepped for that, the less likely it is to really do anything.
Okay,
with it,
yeah,
I think.
I
So-
know that it's going to be a hard watch, so I
Right.
can go in with that.
But it's not a hard watch because it's not good. It's going to go by so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Zach? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Dear Zachary is like a fast-paced documentary.
Yeah, it's just the content that's hard.
Right. I didn't even think it was that hard. It just made me angry. It's like one of the few documentaries where I was like, I wanted to throw something at the wall when I was done. It like frustrated me. Anyway, so that's that. The other documentary that I think is a challenging watch, but a good one, is Black Tar Heroin from 1999, which follows a couple of people who are addicted to black tar heroin around in the 90s. And you get to know them just enough to realize that they are great people who, man, just have the worst addiction you can imagine. And even though they're doing things that like they're stealing things and stuff like that, you can just tell that they're good souls who have been hollowed out by this drug, essentially. And it's hard to watch. Good people be in pain and know that you can't that nobody could have done something for them at the time. And yeah, that I found that documentary very hard to watch, but it probably did more for me to understand. It recontextualized drug addicts for me. Because, you know, I grew up in the 90s in a pretty conservative household, a Reagan household, you might say. And so, like, my perception was just like, just say no. You know what I mean? Like, like those old campaigns and stuff like that. That was like, well, if you were addicted to drugs, it's your fault. You're an idiot. You know what I mean? You obviously aren't intelligent enough to not be on drugs, type of thing. And then you watch a movie like Black Tar Heroin, and it puts a face on something that is generally faceless, at least if you're not around it, like I'm not. And it, just reframed what an addict is to me, and changed my perspective on how to approach all those kinds of things. We don't have to get into it, but like, I'm full like legalize everything at this point. So, because the only way to help some of these people is to do that. Generally, is to like take all stigma away and make treatment like impossible to avoid, essentially. The opportunity for treatment impossible to avoid.
I don't
not criminalize the act either.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think about this issue, but why not decriminalize drug use and criminalize drug selling?
We could talk about that. Sure.
Okay.
Sounds like a great after show topic.
It's in the conversation. All right.
Okay.
I gotcha.
It's in the conversation. I think you definitely do one before the other, but I do think until you do both, you'll never fully, treat the issue.
Okay.
But yeah.
You have to reduce demand. So if you can reduce demand, the other one kind of goes away on its own, in a way. Or at least how big that issue is goes down quite a bit. So that's my number 6. 2 hard to watch documentaries.
All right. Well, my number 6 is a movie that's a case for animated films are not just kids' movies. That animated films are cinema. And this is 1988's Grave of the Fireflies, which you could show to kids, but you got to prepare them for some things first. Not that visually there's anything challenging about this movie, but content-wise, this is a really difficult movie to watch. This movie takes place in the waning days of World War II, and it follows a brother or 2 siblings. I can't remember the brother or sister exactly what, who are orphans and take up shelter in a bomb shelter to try and survive the end of the war. And it's just, you're watching these kids struggle day to day with getting food, getting water, feeling safe. You have an older sibling who's trying to take care of their younger sibling who doesn't fully understand what's happening, doesn't understand why they're hungry. And it's just, it really draws emotion out of you. Even though you're watching animated characters, the emotions are so raw, the empathy you feel for these children who are victims of this war. It's, they had nothing to do with any of the inciting actions that caused the war, yet here they are, orphaned and hungry in a bomb shelter. And it will ruin your night. I think it's worth seeing. It's a very powerful movie, but you're not going to want to just feel good afterwards. You're just going to want to watch this movie, sit with it, go to bed, and then talk about it with someone later.
Yeah, it's a sad movie.
It is. It top 100 movie for me because it's so affecting, but not an easy movie to watch.
Yeah.
It's not a Miyazaki movie, right? But it's still Studio Ghibli? Is that
correct? Right? It's Ghibli, but it's not Miyazaki.
Right.
Yep.
James, one of my favorite sound effects that you do is the correct one. I think it's so funny.
Why?
It's just so funny, like how he says it.
What is that from?
Is it? I don't know. Is it Simpsons?
Oh,
or
this
Futurama?
That?
I can't.
I hear it, but sure, yeah.
You guys can't hear that?
Correct.
No, it's in the background.
So weird. That's Plankton from SpongeBob.
Oh, okay. So it is a cartoon.
Yeah.
All right, my number 6.
Yeah.
is Showa from 1985.
Oh.
This is a documentary. It is almost 10 hours long. And it's not in English. So it's and it's about the Holocaust. Featuring primarily interviews with survivors and perpetrators. So it's hard, it's challenging to watch on every level. The time commitment is extensive. This is, I think, the longest film I've ever watched. It's not a mini series, it's a film. It's 9.5 hours long. The presentation is hard because it's in a foreign language. Not just that, it's in several foreign languages. And a lot of times, they'll interview someone who, like, let's say, speaks Polish, and then they'll have a translator that translates it into, let's say, German. Until you hear the Polish, and then they'll translate it into German, and then the Polish, and that kind of thing. So presentation is hard, and then content is very difficult because these are interviews with actual Holocaust survivors and Holocaust perpetrators, and just people that were living around in those times and seeing things happen. There's not a lot of like archival footage. It's a combination of interviews with people, like, you know, usually outside, just talking straight to the camera, or present day locations. So they might show like a train yard today, and just as they're talking about it, show it today. So it doesn't show old footage. It shows like current footage of what those places look like today, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly engrossing. So it's not challenging to watch in the sense of like it's boring, because what these people have to say is very moving. But for all the reasons I said, and the fact that it's almost 10 hours long, it definitely makes it, you know, kind of like a big mountain to climb. But I really appreciated watching Showa, and I definitely recommend it to people.
Was that a list movie for you, or like a class assignment or something?
It was a list movie. I went into it just because I wanted to watch it.
How many sittings did it take?
I watched it in one sitting, one day.
Wow.
10 hours, one sitting?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming you like, this is Showa day for you. You were like, this
Yes.
is the day I watch it.
Yeah, this was a Saturday. I watched it alone. Yeah.
I
took like bathroom breaks and stuff.
Zach's circling on the calendar. He's like, ooh, show day's coming up. Get ready.
No.
Had a countdown, Post-its. Yeah.
But I haven't seen any other film like this. And yeah. And survivors of the Holocaust are super old right now, right? So like these personal testimonials are not going to be possible pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are actually kind of young. Like the older ones are long gone at this point.
Most of the survivors were now children, if not small children.
Exactly.
During the Holocaust. Yeah.
All right. My number 5 is my last duo on this list. It's kind of the same movie, Funny Games from 1997 and 2007. Directed by the same director. One made in his natural language of German, and one made in English, the English remake. I prefer the English remake just because, you know, subtitles. And also, it's kind of interesting to see Naomi Watts and Tim Roth in this kind of movie because they're well-known names. Maybe Tim Roth, not so shocking. But to see Naomi Watts in this movie, I think is, I don't know what I'm saying. I just don't, I associate Tim Roth with like independent movies from the 90s, whereas Naomi Watts was never in those from my recollection. So maybe she was. Anyway, we've talked about this movie before, so I don't have to go too deep into it, but the reasons why it's challenging to watch is because it's a home invasion movie where these two guys invade the home of a married couple, and they essentially psychologically torture the people that live in this house and play mind games with them. And then at some point, it becomes less psychological torture and more actual torture. And you just don't know why they're there or why they're doing the things they're doing. they've home invaded, but they're not asking for money. They're not asking to steal the guy's Rolex or his car in the garage or anything like that. Like, so the movie, you're just trying to ascertain why they're doing this to this couple. And while the movie plays, they break the fourth wall a lot. The two invading characters, the home invaders, and they constantly check in with you as the viewer and make sure that you understand that you can turn this off whenever you want. That, like, if you're uncomfortable watching this, the only reason why you're still uncomfortable is because you continue to watch it. So it kind of makes you feel like you're complicit. Like you could stop the pain of these characters just by shutting off the movie. But they've opened up the question in such an interesting way that you don't want to do that. And then the characters are asking you, well, why don't you want to? Because this is not going to end up good. Like he's literally telling you how it's going to end, and yet you continue watching it. It's just an interesting way to write a movie, like intentionally guilt tripping your audience for falling for the thing that you've set them up to do. And then when you're done with it, I'm not sure you actually learn anything from the experience, but it is uncomfortable. It's interesting that that's what it is. It's interesting that it's so well made that the same director decided to make an English version. And it was successful on the level it needed to be. Good movie, but hard to watch. Funny games, both versions.
Yeah, another one I'll probably never watch, to be completely honest.
I've seen the American version, and it's hard to watch.
Is it the same cast?
No.
Oh, okay.
Is it?
No.
Completely different cast. Like almost word for word the same, but completely different cast.
And shot for shot, right?
Yep.
Almost. Oh, so Naomi Watts is not in both versions.
No.
She's in the
it's like Germans. We were speaking German in the original, and then he just made an American version, got American stars, shot the same movie.
Interesting. Okay. All right. My number 5 is Old Boy from 2003, directed by Park Chan-wook. This is a South Korean film. Starts with a man being kidnapped and held in a prison of some sort. It's like a hotel room, but it's a prison for 15 years. He doesn't know why he's been kidnapped, why he's being held there. And then one day he's just let out. And the movie is mostly following him as he's trying to figure out who his captors were or are, why he was captured, and sort of piece this puzzle together. This movie is challenging both visually. There is some extreme violence in it. There's a famous hammer scene. There's a famous squid scene. There's a famous tongue scene. And I'm sure if you've seen this movie, all these things are coming back to you. But also content-wise, this movie is, or plot-wise, I guess you could say, this movie is challenging too, as this man learns about his past, about the actions that he took to get him to where he was, and about the things that are being done to him to get revenge on him for what he did in the past. As you learn more about this man, you both sympathize with him because of what he's going through, but also come to hate him because of what he has done in his past. It's a very well-made film, kind of broke South Korean cinema for a lot of people in America, and is a very, I would say, beloved film, but definitely not an easy movie to jump into. So if you have not seen Old Boy, know what you're getting into before you get into it.
Such a great movie.
Yeah. I think it's either getting or will be, or just got a 4K release. Because it's one of those hard movies to find where it had a DVD release, but never had a Blu-ray release. Right, James?
You can see it in theaters right now in Orlando.
Why?
Okay. They re-released it. I think because of the 4K release or something. Yeah, the 20-year anniversary or something like that. They just re-released it in theaters.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's been a movie I've been trying to own. And like the DVDs are so expensive because they're so rare. But now with a 4K release, I'm hoping to eventually pick up a copy of it.
Okay. Okay, my number 5, it's called The Color of Pomegranates. And we're getting to the part of my list where I have a lot of kind of experimental avant-garde films that I've watched.
Okay.
I just texted you guys both a link to it on Zoom. If you want to if you want to just like kind of scrub through that.
Can
So
I
you
just
get a-
describe what I'm looking at?
Please.
Okay. There's okay. There's
Can
these
you-
it's hard to describe. There's these guys who
It sounds like
Wow.
you can't describe what you're looking at.
it's kind of hard to describe.
That's
Let
why
me,
I had
let
to
me
show
click
you a
your link.
That's
Let
why
me
I
get
had
it back
send
to
you a
that
link.
scene. There's 2 guys laying on the ground on a red rug and 4 guys playing instruments, but yet there's
Yes.
floating instruments floating around them, and the 2 guys lying on the rug are rolling around on the rug. They're not just lying on it; they're like rolling around.
Sure.
And I don't know why it's happening.
Scrub through the movie, see if you see any more scenes that just kind of make you scratch your head a little bit.
Oh yeah, just about all of it.
I'm watching a woman in red with like a candy striped hat, and it looks like she's maybe sewing, but she's looking dead on camera. I have the sound turned off right now, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure what
good.
audio
That's
is going on, but yeah, it's just she's just like kind of moving her hands back and forth with sewing implements in them, looking right at us. Oh, and it's saying "You are fire. You are dressed in fire" is what the subtitles are saying
Okay.
right now.
So while you
Oh,
guys kind of like watch this, let me tell the listeners at home what this movie is.
Please.
It's called The Color of Pomegranates. It is a poetic retelling of the life of an Armenian poet named Sayat Nova. So this is a famous Armenian poet, and this is a biopic of his life, told with a ton of symbolism. You know, things like peacocks and pomegranates and all sorts of stuff like that. The visual presentation is almost like a lot of like living tableaus, I would say. Like think if you made like a diorama with people and real people in it, and it goes from tableau to tableau essentially.
It's very Wes Anderson-ish.
I mean, if
It's-
Wes Anderson was making experimental,
In
Well,
the late 60s.
here's the thing. Yeah, the late 60s.
yeah,
This movie walked so Wes Anderson could run.
Sure.
This movie was actually very influential in the kind of world cinema, and it's visually arresting. I think you guys can attest that like visually it's very interesting, even if you have no idea what's happening. Right?
Mhm.
It's got some really cool imagery, but I mean it's an hour and 20 minutes of exactly what you're seeing, so it's challenging to say the least. I thought interesting. I mean, so much of it went over my head because I don't know anything about Armenian poet Sayat Nova. But it's definitely visually interesting and definitely challenging.
And definitely free to watch on YouTube.
Yeah.
if I've like scrubbed through a couple scenes with this sound off, can I check this? Can I call it a
Absolutely
watch?
not. Absolutely
Okay.
not. You have to earn this badge.
It's only an hour and 20, right? It's
Yeah.
not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's that's.
I mean,
doable.
every couple of minutes you get a new thing where you're just like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
look at this for a little bit. It's like walking through a museum almost.
Kyle, go to 4653.
Okay. Hold on, I closed the window.
That's pretty wild.
4653. I
Yeah.
did see
It's
a
nothing.
scene.
It's nothing naughty or anything. It's just
Okay.
wild.
I did see a scene of a bunch of sheep on like steps.
Check the link in the description under Zach's list if you want to watch this. I will link the full movie
Yeah.
in there.
This won't be the last movie I send you guys a link for.
Okay.
Wonderful. I
Interesting.
mean, this one was like pretty okay to click on. Are the other ones going to be
Yeah.
shocking when we click on them?
No, you'll be fine.
Okay.
My number
Um,
4 is more watchable than that. It's 2009's Dogtooth, which is
Yeah, it's a weird
Yorgos
movie.
Lanthimos movie. Yeah, weird movie. Yorgos Lanthimos, who went on to make The Lobster and The Favorite. And I can't wait for his new one, Poor Things. That should be good. Also, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and 2 movies I've been promising to watch for 5 years straight, Alps and Canetta. So yeah, Dogtooth is a hard movie to watch. Just one, because it's awkward, like intentionally so, I would say. Like the human interaction depicted in the movie is like intentionally awkward. There's a reason for it, and a good reason, and like eventually you'll learn that reason. But while you're watching it, you'll just be like, why don't these people act normal? Because it's not even, they're acting abnormal in an uninteresting way, I would say. And everybody's super dry. It's a movie in Greek, made by a Greek person. And at first, when I was watching it, I thought that was just like the style of Greek movies, because I don't really watch Greek movies normally. But this had been recommended to me. And then as the movie wound up, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't a Greek thing. It's just he's intentionally doing this because it's part of why these people will be interesting farther along down the line. The other reason it's hard to watch is because it's about child abuse in a weird way, abusing a child by withholding information from them, I would say, or even twisting information, like intentionally telling them wrong things or misleading them well into their teenage years. There's also like some weird underage sexual things that happen in the movie that make it challenging to watch. And there's also a little bit of violence, even self-inflicted or I don't know what you'd call it, self-inflicted pain.
Self-mutilation.
Self-mutilation. There's some self-mutilation. Some light self-mutilation, I would say. But intense. Light but intense.
Similar to the light prostitution of Jean Dielman.
Right. So yeah, if all those things don't sound like fun to you, that's because they aren't. And that's what makes the movie challenging. I also think if you're into like art house movies and you can stomach stuff like that, all of those things have reasons. They're not just to weird you out or gross you out. They're in service of a bigger story that I think makes the movie worth watching. But I would not argue with anybody if they said that it's a challenging movie, because I would agree with that. It is challenging. My number 4.
I didn't care for that movie, but I see why you put it on the list.
Great movie.
My number 4 is Mother! ! Lowercase m.
That's challenging to watch.
From 2017, directed by Darren Aronofsky. This movie stars Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem. They are a couple who live in a house seemingly in the middle of nowhere. I believe Javier Bardem is a writer or some sort of creative artist. And Jennifer Lawrence is just sort of his wife / muse. We don't learn much about her right away. And they are having a couple friends over for a dinner party. And this dinner party throughout the movie just grows and grows, and more people show up and will not leave. Jennifer Lawrence is trying to get these people to leave her house. Javier Bardem seems totally fine with them being there. The house becomes more chaotic as this party goes on. Things are getting broken. Farm animals are showing up, and then it gets super strange from there. And this movie does not let up. You don't really get a release until the very end. It starts at 1 and takes you to 100 and just ramps up the entire way through. A lot can be said about this movie, about what's actually happening. There are some definite tough things to watch. There is some violence, and there is one act of violence that really affected me. That was hard to watch. But I think there is a lot to be said for this movie and a lot to discuss. And if you can get through the intensity and just the anxiety this movie presents, I think you can love this movie. I think it's pretty great, but I understand why other people saw this movie and had to turn it off.
It's definitely pretty intense.
I'm curious to know what part was like the point of no return for you, the baby or the Jennifer Lawrence part?
What do you mean by the point of no return?
Like the part where you were saying like there's one thing that like really you had a really hard time with.
With the baby.
It was the baby for me.
The baby thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Of course.
Which
And
I think
he
for
just had a baby, right?
Yeah, I watched this. When I watch this? I'm curious. June 2021. No, so my son was 6 years old by the time I saw this, but I don't think it matters. I think once you have become a parent, it doesn't really matter how old your kid is when you see acts of violence against children. It's sort of, and I'm sure people who are non-parents also can't watch acts of violence against children, but it's different for me now that I'm a parent.
Like you enjoy it less now that you're a parent than when you did before.
Correct. No, I'm saying it affects me differently. It hits closer to home now. Not that I enjoyed it beforehand, but it's harder to watch than it was.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. My number 4, I just texted you guys another link. It's from 1967. It's called Wavelength. This is my number 4 most challenging film I've watched. This one's only 45 minutes. So you might think that means it is a walk in the park, but it is not. It's an experimental film where they start with kind of a wide shot in an empty room. And then over the course of 45 minutes, Kyle, you'll like this. It's a oneer.
Oh, great. It's a true oneer?
Yeah, it's a true oneer.
How did they get 45 minutes of reel?
Over the course of 45 minutes. It's video. It's shot on video.
Oh, like VHS?
This is before VHS. I don't know.
1967.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Over the course of 45 minutes, they slowly zoom in the room until they zoom into a picture on the wall at the opposite end of the room. So you guys have the link. You can kind of scrub through it if you want to see the action.
Are they like changing the exposure on the film also?
Yeah. Occasionally they'll change exposure on the film or do some stuff. There is like some background noise that happens. I think it's on loop or something.
There's some cars driving in the background.
For sure. Yeah. But it's the movie is meant to be like this exercise in like pure form, right? Like, so strip everything away from cinema into one thing and explore that one thing for 45 minutes. And in this case, it is slowly zooming in on a picture across the room. And so when I approach movies like this, I really try to approach them with the right spirit about it. And so I watch these movies intently. Like, I don't look away. I don't have out my phone. I was like, they want me to watch a film that's 45 minutes long, slowly zooming in. And so I'm going to watch it. And that's hard to do. It's just naturally challenging.
No, Zach, there's a cut.
There's a cut?
Yep. You get around 39 minutes. You're getting pretty close to the picture.
Yeah.
And then there's a dissolve and you're in the picture. Disappointed. I was hoping there was to be a literal push into the picture.
Sorry, man.
One star. Fake oneer.
It's filmed over the course of a week.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think they combined lots of shots.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's multiple cuts in it. So
yeah,
but it's still a slow push into a photo.
Yeah.
It's 45 minutes of that.
Yeah.
Until it just jumps into the photo.
I wonder how they did that. Like, do you think they literally like zoomed the lens, or do you think they just moved the camera closer?
It definitely looks like a zoom is happening. So they probably had some sort of rig. They could zoom it in. Yeah, certainly a challenging watch. With maybe limited benefit, but let experimental artists do their thing, and maybe we can extract some beauty from some of it. But this one was interesting.
Oh, there's like a person walking through frame right now.
Oh yeah, things happen. I mean, yeah.
This played in theaters.
I'm
sure it played in a theater.
I don't know where it originally played. I mean, it's famous. It's not like some obscure thing that I stumbled upon.
Sure.
It's well known, but yeah.
So like the color of pomegranates,
yeah,
visually is super interesting.
Totally.
Whereas Wavelength is boring.
Yeah, that's why it's higher on my list. It's more challenging. Even though it's shorter, it's more challenging than the color of pomegranates.
Yeah, and the color of pomegranates like is changing the visuals constantly.
Yeah.
Presentation is, formulaic, but the visual is changing. Whereas
Just to
the
warn,
other
this is
ones.
my number 4 most challenging film I've seen.
Yeah,
Right.
where are we going from here?
Yeah. Could you guys imagine watching this for 45 minutes without doing something else?
No. I couldn't.
I could
So-
imagine doing it in a theater, but there's not a chance I'd make it at home.
Zach, when you watch this, did you literally just stare at the screen for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
No other distraction.
Yeah. No, I very intentionally, like, I'm not going to get anything out of this movie whatsoever. It's a pointless exercise if I don't at least give it a go, you know?
Yeah. How many movies did you watch before you had a wife and children?
A lot.
Okay.
Most of the ones on your list were before, right?
All of them. Every single
Yeah.
movie on my list was before.
I just imagine like you're in your office staring at your computer as it zooms into like a picture, and then Julie's downstairs with the kids and they're screaming like, "I'm doing work."
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So,
Okay.
yeah, those days are done for now.
All right, my number 3 is from 2008. It's a horror movie titled Martyrs. Directed by Pascal Laugier. And this movie kind of plays like your typical horror movie, typical like psychological horror movie. And then at some point right at the end, it gets real extreme real fast, I would say. And not in like a Saw torture kind of way, just in like a what is going on? You know what I mean? It's just like you thought you were watching The Ring and you're like relatively safe in the confines of this R-rated movie in English, starring somebody who looks normal. Like, yeah, it's like about these two young French girls. I think they're like orphans, and I don't even know how to describe what happens in this movie. At one point, they find that there's like this underground cult happening, and they go underground to try to figure out what's going on, and then they end up in individual cells, and it's all super intriguing and interesting and like scary and like a what's going to happen kind of way. I really want to say what happens. Well, that makes it super challenging, but it's the reason to watch the movie. So I feel like it's like a really major spoiler to say why people find this movie challenging. It's really good? Question mark. If like some people will probably shut it off disgusted and not want to watch all the way to the end. You're right at the end when that happens, by the way. This movie is only 99 minutes long, so it's not super long. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about Martyrs. It's a hard one to talk about without giving away what would shut somebody off from the movie.
What do you think, James? Should I watch it? Should I check it out?
I kind of want to rewatch it before I would recommend it. It's been 15 years since I saw it. I remember being affected by it just because I had never seen anything like that.
Is this the 2008 one or the 2015 one?
The 2008 one.
Okay.
I'm having deja vu because I'm pretty sure, James, you discussed this movie last week
I did? Not last
on our
week.
Forgotten Films 2008.
Did I mention Martyrs? I don't believe I did.
I thought there was maybe it was a different horror movie you did on our Forgotten Films 2008.
Maybe I did. Let's look. If I did, I got to get my brain checked.
I just remember James being like, "Yeah, it's about two girls in the woods," and
No,
I really
that
want to
was-
spoil it.
That
for
was
you, but-
Eden Lane.
Eden Lake.
Eden Lake.
Oh, this is a different. Okay, it
Totally
sounds
different movie.
It sounds like the same movie to me. So
So this movie is a part of like they call it the New French Extremity movement.
Oh, like what was that one with the buzzsaw? High Tension,
right.
right? That was in that vein. Yeah.
So New Extremity, I'll just give you a little bit of the Wikipedia. They were notable for including graphic images of violence, especially sexual violence and rape, as well as explicit sexual imagery. I actually don't put Martyrs in that category. which is why I need to watch it again before I'd recommend it to Zach. Because maybe there's something that I'm not remembering in that movie that would fit into that. Maybe graphic images of violence. Yes. But all the graphic images of violence in my brain are after the fact. The result of the violence minus actually seeing the violence happen, which is probably what affected me the most. Is like something happens to a character where like in one scene they're normal and the next scene they're not normal. And something happened in between there that you can very easily figure out. But it's disturbing. So I walked away from this movie disturbed, but I also think it's very well made for what it is. And that's why it's hard to watch, but it's on my list.
It's a terrifying journey into a living hell of depravity.
Who said that?
Letterboxd.
Interesting. Who, like, somebody wrote that as a review?
No. That's the plot synopsis.
Oh.
And it says that this woman goes on a terrifying journey into the living hell of depravity.
Yeah, I didn't even know this, but since Zach mentioned it, I guess there's one from 2015 that remade the original French language version. Okay.
Check it out.
All right. My number 3. I'm curious to see what pop up in either of your lists. Probably not Zach's, but maybe still James. Is 1971's A Clockwork Orange, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Very famous movie, so I don't think I need to say a ton about this. But just in case you're not familiar with this movie, I know you guys are. This movie follows a young man in, I guess, futuristic England technically, but it's like a near future from the 70s, named Alex DeLarge, and he is in a gang of thugs that beat and murder and rape people at will. And this movie shows those beatings and murders and rapes at will until eventually he is arrested and then tortured into not wanting to perform those acts anymore. So obviously this movie is hard to watch because it shows the acts as they're happening. And then the torture that then Alex goes through to rehabilitate him is also challenging to watch. But this is Kubrick, and it's just made so well that it's a movie that I gave 5 stars. It's a movie I like. It's a movie that's a top 100 movie. And it's a movie that I sometimes feel bad liking as much as I do, just because artistically it is so accomplished, even though content-wise it can be incredibly challenging.
Yeah, content's rough.
Yeah.
What's
Okay,
the name of it?
Clockwork Orange.
You never seen that, James?
Sorry. I have seen it.
Okay. I'm like, have you heard of Stanley Kubrick?
I don't remember them actually showing the rapes, but maybe I just block these things from my brain.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I'm not sure how far into the rape they go, but there's definitely a woman being assaulted and stripped, and I don't want to keep describing it. So
Sure.
I'm not sure how much you need to see to count it, but it's pretty clear what's happening.
Gotcha.
All right. My number 3 is, I think, by a director that might show up on Kyle's list. If it not, I think he forgot about it or blocked it out. But I don't think you've seen this film. It's the director's Bela Tarr, and the film is called Satan Tango.
He directed the Werkmeister Harmonies also, correct?
He did, yes.
Yeah, I left that one off because I did not enjoy that movie.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
But
okay.
I definitely considered it, and I knew you were going to put this movie on your list.
Yeah.
Santa Tango.
Yeah. Is it pronounced Tango? I don't know how to say it.
I'll look it up while you talk about it.
It's spelled Satan Tango.
Satan Tango.
It's from 1994, so it's a relatively modern movie, and it's 7.5 hours long. And so again, like, it's not like a miniseries or like a TV show with multiple episodes. This is a 7.5 hour long movie, and it's by a Hungarian director. My grandma's Hungarian. And I've been to Hungary. This is not the Hungary that I know. It's shot in black and white, and it's one of the like magnum opuses of slow cinema. So it's an incredibly meticulously shot, slowly paced film for 7.5 hours. It's tedious to watch, honestly. It's a shame because it's gorgeous to look at. Like the black and white photography is amazing, like really, really rich blacks and like incredibly sharp focus, and just the images are absolutely beautiful. But the movie, like we'll spend, 10 minutes following a wagon down a trail, with nothing's happening, but the wagon's going down the trail. You could probably edit this movie down to 20 minutes, of actual plot. So it's a challenge to watch for sure. I don't think I even really liked the movie. I don't think it was worth all that. It was too challenging for me to enjoy, but also very impressive. At least from the cinematography perspective, it's incredible cinematography that most films couldn't dream of replicating. He's got another film called Workmeister Harmonies.
Yes.
That's as famous, more famous, I don't know, that he made 6 years later. I do plan at some point to watch that one.
Oh, you haven't watched that one?
No, I've never seen it.
Oh, that one's only 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Right.
That's a breeze compared to
It sounds
Tango.
much more forgiving because instead of 7.5 hours, it's only 2 hours. So I'll watch it at some point. But this movie was an ordeal to get through. So
you're still going to get light plot and following a guy walking from like one village to the next for 10 minutes. There's no dialogue. It's just the camera following him as he's walking.
Yeah.
So I would say prepare yourself for what you've already been through, but just know it's like a third the runtime. So
yeah. So I don't know if I have a masochist streak in me when it comes to cinema, but I'll try things, but I won't always like them.
And just to clarify, when did you watch Satan Tango?
Before I got married.
Okay, yes, there. So
my number 2 is a movie titled Antichrist.
Okay.
Which is a movie that I think is good at what it's trying to do. And that's kind of be a hard film to watch, I would say. Wikipedia calls it a horror art film, which I think is pretty apt, I would say. It's a movie at its base, beyond the controversial imagery in the film. It's a movie about the depression that a couple have after the death of their child. And the movie is like a visual representation of just the depression and anguish and grief that would cause on two people as individuals and as a couple. And they go through, visually depicted, a series of scenes where they're physically torturing each other. And every time they do that, it's a representation of one of those things, one of those types of grief. And it's super effective and jarring and kind of revolting to look at. But also, in the end, where it ends, you kind of I understood it as a visual representation of lives being ended. You know what I mean? Of people just tearing each other apart because of a tragedy that nobody would ever wish on anybody, basically, having a child die. And so if what I just described isn't your boat, you should probably avoid it because it's hard to watch. But if you're into art films and you also like horror movies, this is a combination of the two for sure. I don't think the movie's intended to be taken completely literally, but it does toe the line between like the presentation toes the line of like a complete fantasy. I think you're supposed to interpret it as imagery representing feelings, but it's depicted realistically. So it's a tough distinction to make as you're watching it. It's easier to make after you've watched it, but as you're watching it, it'll be hard to watch for sure. But I think it's pretty good in the end. But not for everybody. I could see you guys watching it if you haven't. I don't think either of you have seen it, right?
I haven't seen it.
I've never seen it, no.
I think either of you could watch it and get something out of it. It's extreme for sure, but not extreme. It's not extreme for no reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I also understand if you never want to watch it.
I've never seen a Lars von Trier movie, and that probably will not be my first either.
Oh, you should see Melancholia. That's a better entry point.
Okay. I kind of figured that one's the easier one to start with. And then, and was there's also Dogtown, or whatever that one's called, with Nicole Kidman?
Yep. That's another one. I haven't seen that one, but I think Zach has, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one's, it could have made my list. It's very challenging, but it's amazing.
You're thinking of Dogville.
Dogville. Okay.
What movie did you say?
I said Dogtown, but
I haven't seen Dogtown. But
Dogtown and the Z Boys. Dancer
Dogville
in the
is
Dark.
a 5 out of 5, but it's incredibly challenging to watch.
Oh, Dancer in the Dark. That's Bjork, correct?
Bjork. That's also. I mean, that one was Oscar nominated, so I'm assuming it's palatable on some level.
Is that the Swan Dress movie?
That is the Swan Dress movie.
Okay, cool.
I don't think she doesn't wear that in the movie. She just wore it to the awards.
She wore it to the Oscars, and that's the okay.
Right.
Perfect.
Oh, The House That Jack Built was watchable. That's a
Okay.
2018 movie from him about a serial killer.
I'll dip my toe into Lars von Trier eventually. We'll get there.
Okay.
All right. My number 2 and number 1 are interchangeable. I just land on this one being my number 2, but easy to be my number 1. If Hard to Be a God was the movie I was hoping to be a sci-fi movie that I was missing and didn't pan out, then this movie, my number 2, was the war movie I was hoping that I was missing out on, and I found, if that makes any sense. And this is Come and See, which is, I think, okay, interesting effects to have there. Come and See is often described as like the great war movie that you haven't seen. And this is definitely a incredible movie about war. This movie is a Belarusian movie made in 1988, 85. And it follows a young boy in Belarus, or a teenager, I should say, who wants to fight the Nazis who are invading his country. And he's at the beginning of the movie, he's really excited to take up arms and to join like a local militia and to fight for the freedom of his village. And then slowly through the movie, he just experiences horror after horror of war until the very end. He's this hollowed shell of himself, and he's experiencing some incredibly violent acts of war by some incredibly but it's by people who just don't care, who just are enjoying being violent against other people. This is a incredibly hard movie to watch, just because you are watching a teenager see these horrible acts and then slowly just become not a person anymore. But it is a super effective movie, and I think it is one of the great war films that people have not seen but should.
Yeah, it's everything Kyle said it was.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay, my number 2, I have another link for you guys, just so you can experience it, but it's called Dog Star Man.
I've heard of this.
You've heard of Dog Star Man?
Yeah.
It's really like 3 or 4 short films. Like he released it in parts, right? So the combined thing is 78 minutes. I'll send you a link. This plot is a man climbs a mountain with his dog. Maybe you guys can feel free to jump around in this link. Maybe tell me what you're seeing. I'd be curious.
Lots of zoomed in images of trees, clouds.
I'm seeing a black screen with a spinning white circle.
I just saw like what kind of looked like a man with like one of those masks from the medieval times that kind of looks like a crow's nose.
Sure.
What do they call those masks? I forget.
I don't know what they're called.
Like the doctor's mask thing you're talking about?
Yeah. So this is 78 minutes long. And the whole movie is exactly what you're seeing right now. It's a ton of like rapid editing, superimposed film over each other, hand painted frames, extreme close-ups. There's a lot going on at any given moment.
I was a baby crying.
It's very abstract, very experimental. And to be honest, 78 minutes of this is really, really hard to get through. I'll take Wavelength over this. Wavelength that asks very little of you. That's the one that slowly zooms in.
Yeah.
This one just demands a ton of things from you because you're just trying to eke out some sort of meaning from everything that you're seeing. But yeah, it's a pillar of the avant-garde kind of experimental film movement that like was really big in the 60s, and it was definitely a challenging watch for me. I did not like Dog Star Man. I really disliked it.
This looks like the music video Tool wanted to make in 1993.
Or like this looks like Nine Inch Nails.
Or Nine Inch Nails, yeah. I mean, any of those late or early 90s avant-garde bands were making this music video for sure.
Although I did just see a sequence of a guy stumbling up a mountain carrying an axe with a dog with him, and now he's rolling down the mountain. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's the plot of this movie. It's him going up and down a mountain.
That was the only action of this movie that made sense. Yeah. The rest of it has just been zoomed in images, panning in and out of.
I feel like I've seen it now. I'll just mark it on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Again, this is one you got to earn if you want to mark it.
I got the gist of this one.
Fair enough.
Yep.
All right, my number one is the movie that I consistently over time have tried to get other people to watch, and it's just really hard to convince people to watch this movie, which makes it the most challenging. It's a movie that I love, but I understand why people are challenged by it. It's from 1999, and it's The Blair Witch Project.
Interesting.
It's because people just they don't want to watch shaky cam horror movies, and they don't want to be scared by shaky cam horror movies. And this is kind of the one that everybody has said is like the scariest of them all. It's the one that got the most hype when it came out. And also a lot of people that watch it legitimately get sick by the shaky camera work, because the people who made found footage movies after this movie figured out that like you can't go full shaky cam. You got to go like just enough that people aren't sick, but enough to make it believable at the same time. Whereas Blair Witch Project was literally like people who didn't know how to hold cameras. They sent them out into the woods and had them film themselves to make this movie. So that's what you got, was like something that was super shaky, but realistic because of that. And I think people also assume that like, since it's a horror movie, that horrific things are going to happen in the movie. And the reality is it's a lot of like tent shaking in the middle of the woods. You know what I mean? It's like once you actually watch it, it's fairly tame. It could still frighten you, especially if you're afraid of the dark, you're afraid of being out in the woods. You know what I mean? These types of things, you're afraid of witches. I could see those things like really frightening you, and especially in this presentation. So I'm not saying anybody should be ashamed for being scared of it, but it's not Saw. You know what I mean? Like nothing graphic ever happens in the movie. You barely even see the witch. It's like it's like flashes of something way off in the distance, stuff like that. Spoiler alert. And so I don't find it particularly challenging, but I know other people do. And yeah, that's why it's my most challenging movie.
I didn't see it
to get other people to watch it
until this podcast, and I saw it because of you, James, and I liked it.
Zach, you did not see this when it came out.
Nope.
It really?
You did.
Huh. I did. Yeah, I saw it when it came out.
Did you believe it was real when you first watched it?
No, I never thought it was real. Either
were you ever presented that it was real?
I don't remember, to be completely honest. Yeah, I think I always knew it was a movie in my memory. At no point did I hear about Blair Witch Project and say this is actual footage. Like I remember even going on the website, probably even before I saw the movie, because it was one of the first movie websites that was interactive. And yeah, I don't think I ever thought this was actually happening.
Nice.
But it was definitely...
for the record, I never did either. But there was a time that the filmmakers were not saying whether it was real or not. And the media was playing into it.
Right. It was definitely presented at times as being like, these actual people disappeared.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. I'm curious to rewatch this movie. I'm sure it would feel fun to revisit it. It probably doesn't hold up 25 almost years later, but
it's never the same the second time you watch it,
right.
I would say.
Yeah. Meg has never seen it. I kind of want her to watch it, but she's like, I don't like horror movies. Like, it's not really scary.
To some people, it's very scary.
That could be.
To some people, it's absolutely frightening. Camping, having something shake your tent, stuff like that is very scary to some people.
I guess years of Boy Scouts and pranks for me kind of made me numb to camping pranks and things like that. So
sure.
Yeah. All right. My number one is probably the first truly challenging movie I ever saw. The first movie that really sat with me of like, oh, this was a hard watch and I don't know if I can watch this movie again. So that's why it gets the number one spot. Saying that Come and See could have been the number one too. I don't understand. Is this like a Paul Rubens thing we're doing?
It's a Come and See thing, isn't it? It's a comedy, right?
Come and See? I don't get the joke. Zach, are you getting the joke here?
Yes, because I know James. I'm absolutely getting the joke.
Okay. What's the joke?
He's laughing at it.
The joke is, of course, it's not a movie that you would have a Pee Wee Herman laugh to. And so James thinks it's funny to have a Pee Wee Herman laugh to it.
Oh, it's an anti-joke.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. He also hasn't seen the film, so he doesn't know what he's doing.
I haven't. Okay. But I know what it's about. It's like about child war drama.
Oh, yeah. I literally talked about it 2 minutes ago.
Right.
So. All right. Well, so my number one is 2000's Requiem for a Dream, also directed by Darren Aronofsky, the only director to make 2 appearances on my list. So Requiem for a Dream is a movie about drugs and addiction. It follows 4 characters: Jared Leto, Ellen Burstyn, who plays his mom, I'm pretty sure, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans. And all 4 of these people, either they're related or they're friends. They're all in the same orbit. And they're all dealing with addiction. I think for 3 of them, it's heroin addiction. Then Ellen Burstyn, I believe, is addicted to pills. And this movie depicts their addiction. It depicts the drug use. It depicts the things they will go through to get the drug that they need. It depicts how their addiction affects their friendships and their families. And then famously at the end, it kind of shows how these addictions have ruined their lives in various ways. This movie does not flinch away from addiction or the effects of it. Does not flinch away from the harm it does to the body or to the family. And I would say it's a very depressing film to watch. It's a movie I've seen maybe twice, both in the kind of early 2000s. And I would like to say I want to rewatch it just because it's a very well made movie. And I think it introduced some filmmaking techniques that are popular even now, especially like with the quick cuts when people were taking drugs and the eyes dilating. I mean, that's something that we've seen a lot of. since then. But I also know where it's going and what a depressing film it is, and just don't know if I want to put myself in that mindset again, even 20 odd years later. So my number one most challenging movie, Requiem for a Dream.
It's such a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Good
great
one.
movie. All right, my number one is it's actually a series of 7 films, but they're like parts in a larger thing, and it's a documentary about the history of film. It's called Histories du Cinema, and it's directed by Jean-Luc Godard. And Jean-Luc Godard is one of my favorite directors. He has so many films that are incredible. I was very excited to watch his documentary series, which is essentially about the history of film, of cinema. And it's about 4.5 hours long. And I think what makes it so challenging is just how much smarter he is than me. And he made this to express himself, not to dumb it down for someone like me. So like it's so hard to even understand what he's talking about, I think, most of the time. And I absolutely think that he has brilliant things to say. I just I can't follow it for the life of me. And it's in French, and it's kind of like poetic. It's like a video essay basically about the history of film. I absolutely recommend it. I mean, it's so interesting, and there's some nuggets in there that are like really interesting. Like, he certainly knows his history of film, but other parts of it are just so inaccessible. I mean, the way he'll include all of these little visual and textual and dialogue and stuff. It's just so dense, and like he's operating on a whole nother level. I sent you a link to one of them, so you can kind of get a taste of like what watching this is like. It's very challenging to watch. The 7 parts of it are definitely very different from each other. They all are super different. And one of them, for the most part, I like them all about a 3 out of 5 would be the average. One of them, though, was a 5 out of 5. Like, I loved it. It was 3B, Histories of Cinema 3B, A New Wave. That one, for whatever reason, I loved. But yeah, all of them are just very challenging to watch. And, for 4.5 hours of like a video essay, it can be tough, but I found it worthwhile ultimately. So.
Zach, a lot of these movies on your list are movies that I considered watching back when I was doing my list checking days.
Yeah.
And now that my life has changed, I'm not going to get to them. So I feel okay though. The fact that they're on your list of being as challenging as they sound, I feel okay with the fact that I did not get to Dog Star Man or Histoires du Cinema.
Yeah, totally.
You could watch them when you're 65 and retired and have nothing else better to do.
I hope I have better things to do when I'm 65 and retired than just watching avant-garde film. Like, I don't hope I'm out hiking or
oh man, better things to do.
You could do that too.
You can do it all, man.
Maybe on the airplane ride to somewhere exotic, I'll pop on Dog Star Man.
I did watch The Color of Pomegranates on a plane.
Okay. Like, were there people? Do you have seatmates?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. I really wonder what they were like. What the hell is this guy doing?
Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
You were wondering what you were doing too?
Yeah.
Can I give you guys I have 4 honorable mentions that just didn't quite make the cut?
Sure.
Okay. The first one is Bronson, the Tom Hardy movie that I mentioned last week on Grind Films 2008.
Sure.
I left it off because I mentioned it last week, and it's very similar to Clockwork Orange at times. The Thin Red Line by Terrence Malick, his World War II movie that is another slow cinema movie where it's less about the action of war and more about just sort of the sitting around, the boring aspects of war.
I don't find that movie challenging to watch at all.
Okay,
that movie's great.
Yeah, I think that's why I left. I left it off because it's not the war movie that people were expecting when it came out.
It's not an action movie. I'll agree with that.
Yeah,
good trailer too.
Yeah.
My favorite movie of all time, 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is considered by a lot of people the best movie ever. So it's hard to call it challenging, but I also think for like non-cinephiles, this can be a difficult movie to watch, given the fact that there's no dialogue at the first 25 minutes. Doesn't always tell you what's happening, and you definitely have to have an open mind going into it. But definitely more challenging movies out there.
The ending's a little out there too.
For sure, yeah. And then Uncut Gems, Safdie Brothers movie. This movie starts very anxiety-inducing with both the visuals and the music. It never lets up, and it's really hard to watch Adam Sandler's character self-destruct throughout this movie. So very well made, but definitely not a easy movie to sit with.
I had 4 honorable mentions as well.
Please.
Dogville, which we previously mentioned. It's great. It's awesome. But super hard to watch and like trigger warnings like crazy. The thing about it though is it's shot without a set. So the whole movie is in a giant warehouse, right? That's unlit. So like it's just they're in like a void basically. And then they draw the set with like I don't know if it's white lines or chalk basically, as if it's like the most minimalist play you could imagine where like all the walls are just a line on the ground. And the whole movie is that's the set. And I thought I was going to hate it, but it's awesome. It's really good. And one of Nicole Kidman's best performances for sure.
Yeah.
Eraserhead, another Lynch film. That one was challenging to watch content wise, I think.
I still haven't gotten to that one.
Yeah. A Woman Under the Influence. Just because it's first of all, have you guys ever seen a Cassavetes film?
I don't. Name
know.
a couple others. I'm not sure.
So John Cassavetes, A Woman Under Influence is definitely his like most famous one, but let me see if I can come up with his filmography for you. It's tough on
just put a
Wikipedia
letterbox
because
list
they
in
don't
the
just
chat.
throw it out there.
Just put a
Opening
letterbox
Night,
list in the
The
chat.
Killing of a Chinese Bookie, Husbands, Faces. Anyways, A Woman Under the Influence. It's shot like very claustrophobically, like so with long lenses but zoomed in. So we have really tight like close-ups of people's faces that are obviously going through like this woman is going through like a crisis, like a mental breakdown kind of a thing. And Peter Falk's in it, but it's really hard to be with her as she's like cracking essentially. And we're like so claustrophobic with her. And then the last one I put is Tokyo Godfathers, which is a movie we watched for Cinereelists for Christmas episode. And I found this movie just to be so tedious to watch. I hope I never have to revisit it.
I think I liked it more than you, but it wasn't like my favorite of that group. For sure. That was back when we were watching 10 Christmas movies every year.
Yeah.
I don't know how we did that. But we did. Speaking of things we did it, guys. Top 10 most challenging watches. Hopefully that was fun. I mean, what's the ask here? If you know of a movie that's hard to watch that didn't make our list,
send it to James.
I'm not sure if we were looking for recommendations on movies that are hard to watch.
I'm good. I'm good, guys.
How about this? If you're surprised that a movie made our list, and you don't think it's particularly hard to watch, I'll hear somebody out as to why. Maybe that's not true. You could send that to us via social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or you could send us an email with that feedback to heyguys@cinereelists.com, REEL with an S on the end. Also via email or any other method that you'd like to contact us. Let us know what you'd like us to do for episode 600. You could tell us that in Discord too. We seem to get the most action in Discord, to be honest.
Yeah, anything. Discord's been popping right now.
If you're interested in the Discord, let us know and we'll send you the link. Besides that, you could contact me on my Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You're on Twitter still?
Yeah, I am.
You
wanna
want to
call
call
it
it X?
I don't know what that is.
Hey, X gonna give it to you.
You can read my posts on the Exosphere at Twitter and Letterboxd at Shaubin.
I have X, but I'm just for perusing, so don't follow me there. But you can find me on Letterboxd at Peter SKB.
Right. We'll be back next week with an easy movie to watch. Potentially. We might watch Gran Turismo, or we might pick something completely different if we decide not to do that. So one or the other, we're going to do next week. We'll see you guys there. Until then, keep it cinereal.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.